Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on a Monday morning. It's time for our Week 12 NFL review, Sam.
Bright and early on a Monday.
And shout out to to our friends, our partners. We are at 33rd Team, the graphics team. They, do you see the background?
We have mustache pictures now.
They, per request from the fans.
Yeah.
They updated for November.
They did.
The background.
They did. Which is worth pointing out. That's why we have mustaches.
That is why we have mustaches.
Yeah.
Been using my Harry's razor to get clean shaven the last couple weeks to again accentuate the stash. Links in the description.
Indeed, links in the description. I figure so. Tomorrow, I believe, is our last November show, and I kind of owe at least one more update based off the $400 donation that came in. I figure since there's no real place to go with this other than the Hitler, which is, let's say, undesirable, I think tomorrow we'll wear the wig with the mustache and just do a full...
Yeah. When you say tomorrow, that's Wednesday show.
Sorry, Wednesday show. Yeah. The next show. Wednesday show, we'll wear the full wig with the mustache.
Do it.
Yeah.
I like it.
And have a full Palazzolo.
We'll just dual Palazzolas, and we'll have... if we could get the graphics team to update the hair too, maybe for just the one episode, maybe we'll
your hair on my picture.
Just move it over, and it'll be the same picture. It'll be like the meme. So yeah, we appreciate everybody that's already donated. You're stealing all the money because you're doing fun stuff. I'm merely just growing a mustache for all of November. But yes, if you do want to support Men's Health,
it's all going to the same place.
It's all going to the same place. We're doing it as a team here.
Yeah,
supporting Men's Health. During this Movember, all those links are in the description of the YouTube.
Yes.
Ready to go?
Uh-huh.
All right, Week 12. It was wild again. And also, quick programming note for all those watching on the review show here. Wednesday is our preview show. So no midweek Wednesday show. It transforms into the preview show. That'll be Wednesday, 10:30 a.m. this week. And then we're going to enjoy weekend festivities, Thanksgiving, with the family and everything. We'll also pick a little North Reading Linfield this week.
Of course.
Huge Turkey Bowl, baby.
Our bonus picks this year, I'm 2-0 so far. I got the Grey Cup and I got the Jake Paul thing.
Doesn't show up. Doesn't show up in the app.
It's not on the Sleeper app, but I feel like we should just add 2 to my score.
We do. Just +2 for you. Good work. And you have a chance to go +3
Great.
if you pick Linfield and they win again. All right, let's go. It all started Thursday night, Winter Wonderland game. Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. The Browns get the win, 24-19. Tyler in there. Still celebrating, still feeling the effects even of his. I got to know what was going on Thursday night with Tyler. He was fired up. He was joining the chat, our instant reaction chat, celebrating.
Yeah, I mean, I would say he's consumed a beverage or two. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Combined vibes, Jameis wins with drink.
How early do you start on when your team's playing Thursday night football and Anyway.
And expectations are low, It's probably part of it.
Expectations are low. Anyway, the Steelers fall to 8-3 in this one. That's a tough one for Pittsburgh going for that number 1 seed.
Yeah.
And Browns moved to 3-8.
I sent you that quote, right? That they weren't talking about this as a trap game. They were talking about it as an opportunity game. Maybe they should have thought about it as a trap game because they got trapped.
I mean,
they got trapped and they lost.
Words matter until they really don't.
The best words that mattered was, did you see the Jameis quote? Jameis was going to order a dub, and it would be a dub off Amazon. It would be there by 9 p.m. tonight. That's a great line. Great line.
I mean,
Jameis got some good lines. A lot of them are terrible, but that's a good one.
I mean, he was quoting the Old Testament too. Sometimes.
The Old Testament and Amazon. The man's
sometimes
capacity.
Applying the Old Testament to a Thursday night football game, you lose context a little bit, right?
The man's ability to juxtapose, the scripture and modern technology is unparalleled.
Jameis has become what you described Mike Greenberg as, right? Every time you have the opportunity to speak, it's like, all right, here comes the Emmy, here comes my famous speech. Jameis is like, I get a pregame interview. I get a little postgame interview. I gotta make do here. I don't know how long I'm going to be a starter.
Yeah, but his is less contrived. It's just natural.
Oh, he just like Kaylee Hartung's over there, Mike in his face, asks a question. And he's just like, deep breath. All right, here goes. Like I'm going to bring something to the table that no one else is bringing. Jameis is prepared. He's making do every time he's got the microphone. basically.
Sure.
Anyway, it was kind of a fun back and forth game. It was just merely cold and not even that cold, but kind of windy early on.
Yeah,
then
wind
snow
was the
picked
bigger
up
problem early
in the
in the
second
game.
half.
Yeah.
The one prediction that we had early on, we had mentioned that because Russell Wilson holds the ball longer, and this wasn't the only reason, but Myles Garrett could actually sack the quarterback against Pittsburgh, right? Steelers fans for years were like, oh, Myles Garrett does nothing against the Steelers. It's like, yeah, you've got old man Big Ben and Kenny Pickett getting rid of the ball in 2.2 seconds every time they play the Browns. Well, in this one, Myles Garrett with 3 first-half sacks.
Yeah, and honestly, it was, I think, absent of the snow, he would have had a monster game. I mean, I'm sure they would have found some way eventually of slowing him down, but even at halftime, Tomlin was basically like, we're doing everything we can do. Like, we're chipping, we're sending bodies that way. It's not like we're not accounting for him. We haven't just ignored Myles Garrett. He's just beating it. I mean, one of those sacks, or no, it wasn't even, I think it was one of his pressures or his hits. Like, he beat Dan Moore and the chip consecutively and then still got a hit on the quarterback. It's like, there's nothing else we can do. Like, once you've dedicated that kind of resource to the guy, if he's still making the play, that's it. You just have to, like, respect. So Tomlin was saying that at halftime, and then the snow started to really come down, and that's when, footing disappears. And I think that the single position group that harms the most is those pass rushers that need their footing to really, turn the corner and get around those big offensive linemen. So honestly, if the snow hadn't come down, I think Myles Garrett could have had an absolute beast of a day. As it was, he did have those early, the first half sacks, and then slowed down in the second half.
Yeah, he did. I thought both quarterbacks played pretty well too. In the snow, there wasn't much running on either side. A lot of times you divert to run the ball. It's tough to throw the ball in the snow. Wasn't the case in this one. I thought Russ made some big throws too, right? Because the Steelers lost. It wasn't like everything was bad. Russ is over there. Seam route to Calvin Austin through the snow was beautiful. Garrett was inches away from his 4th sack, kind of peeled off into a spiral, had 5 to 10 yards of runway, sprinting at Russell Wilson, who makes a great third down conversion. There were some big plays from both QBs, or key throws from both QBs. And then perhaps the biggest play of the game, it's 3rd and 2. Jameis is under pressure. Essentially it would have been an intentional grounding if his offensive lineman didn't turn around and try to catch the ball that he threw at him. And we talked about it Thursday night in the instant reaction, kind of a quirky rule that we've seen come up a couple times this year, happened with Dak in the end zone, where it's essentially intentional grounding by the quarterback, which would be a loss of down. So it goes from 3rd and 2 to about 4th and 12 if it was intentional grounding, but instead it's illegal touching.
Yeah, if you hit the offensive lineman on the way to intentional grounding, it essentially supersedes it and saves you the penalty.
Correct, well said. So it went to 30, just a 5-yard penalty where you don't lose the down. You replay the down. And so Mike Tomlin was faced with a decision of which the referee announced 4 different ways that he was going to accept, decline, accept, decline, accept, decline. They end up accepting the penalty, so they could have had 4th and 2 or 3rd and 7. The Browns were in field goal range at this time, but it's the snow, right? So it was a long field goal to maybe take the lead. The Steelers choose to move them back. The Browns end up converting and eventually get into the end zone with the game-ending touchdown. So that was a massive play in this game, and also, like I said, a quirky rule, because if it was intentional grounding,
right,
they're out of field goal range, and it's a 4th and 12 with the game on the line.
And that was, like Jameis said this in his interview as well, that he had his own little sort of NFL Films moments. Like, that final drive looked like the kind of drive where the conditions are prohibitive to you executing one of those drives. You know what I mean? It's so rough conditions-wise. Either someone's going to drop the ball or you're simply not going to be able to throw the ball properly. But Winston had a couple of big plays. Jerry Jeudy was making a bunch of plays there.
Yeah.
The conditions, the snow, the slipperiness seemed to bring the best out of Jerry Jeudy. It's like he was like, all right, I've got to really concentrate on these now. He was going in there like full bucket catching, making sure I'm not dropping this. He made a bunch of plays, and Njoku made the more difficult of the 2 catches in the end zone to get his touchdown. Like, a lot of Browns players stood up in this game.
They did. So this was, it was a fun game. Another example, I think, the Browns are 2-2 with, right, is it 2? Yeah, because they beat the Ravens and the Steelers now. 2-2 with Jameis Winston under center. They've just got more opportunities to win games now.
This is also a game, by the way, I would like to credit TJ Watt, because in this rivalry where, if a guy doesn't get on the score sheet from a sack point of view, it's like the guy didn't do anything. He was useless in this game. So Nick Herbig was really good in this game. He had a couple of plays, including a sack,
strip
forced fumble.
sack.
Yeah. TJ Watt was getting a very similar type of attention to Myles Garrett, right? He was getting double and triple teamed the entire game. They were sending all the attention his way, which is what frees up Nick Herbig, Cameron Hayward, and the other guys in that Steelers defensive front to make those plays one-on-one. And they did. Timo Riska from PFF, put out that chart that he does, the double team rate and play over expectation, that kind of thing. Like, TJ Watt has taken as much attention as pretty much any defensive lineman in the game. And that's consequently leading Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, all the other Steelers pass rush to be double teamed almost not at all, and they're being really productive because of it. So, when you're looking at the sort of how good is TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, those guys are sort of matching him for production, for pace, for like win rate. But it's because TJ Watt is getting all the attention. Like, he had the kind of game where Myles Garrett usually has all the attention's being taken by him, double teams, they're trying to take him out of the game. He's not having a huge impact, but that's the impact he's having. It's like a wide receiver whose gravity is taking all the coverage his way. Suddenly a guy's one-on-one against like the fourth string corner. Oh, look, he's having a huge game.
Well said. I mean, we talk about this all the time. We reference that. It's nice that we're able to quantify that.
It just usually goes exactly the other way in this game. It's usually Myles Garrett being
right. He gets the attention, whatever, and
somebody else is making plays. This is the first game in this encounter where it's like TJ Watt had that game. He got him and Myles Garrett in the first half were both receiving a ridiculous volume of attention. And Watt was the guy who had just impacted more just by chance.
It reminds me quickly, I'm teaching a class again, Sam, SMWW, if you're interested in joining, talking about football analytics. We had started last week. It's not too late to join. Check out SMWW, search the football analytics tab. One of the things I want to talk about is context and understanding. And the context there is the way PFF tracks extra attention, I think, is a better way than some of the other charts that are out there, because PFF will tell you if there's a chip or a second blocker, even if it's just like throwing a hand out there to help, that will kind of fall into the category as a double team, where you had highlighted maybe some other measures of double teams don't see that same number from a TJ Watt because they're tracking it differently, and I think that context is important. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else on Thursday Night Football?
No. Good. Just good for Nick Chubb to get in the end zone, multiple times. He didn't have the most impressive game statistically, because it was snowy, etc. But the dude powered his way into the end zone, and that's a feel-good story given his knee injury.
As did Jameis, powering himself into the end zone, flying through the air into the end zone
with his radio flying out of his helmet.
And sorry, you ended up a couple yards short on your PrizePicks projection.
I can't believe that didn't come off. It was even like I called the manner that it was going to happen, flying backwards into across the line. I absolutely nailed it, except he finished on 7 yards instead of 8.5.
Yeah. Sad day for you.
Brutal pick.
The whole show is brought to you by PrizePicks, by the way. $50 when you play $5. Use the promo code Check the Mic.
You too can come up agonizingly short in your PrizePicks lineup.
You can also win as often as we did.
You can
throughout the year. Just highlighting that as well. All right, let's get to Sunday's game starting at 1:00. Sad music time. Sad Godfather music time. Tampa Bay Bucks 30.
Tommy.
Giants 7. Bucks move to 5-6. Giants move to 2-9. Cutlets did not turn things around for the Giants. The Bucks coming off their bye, looking sharp, Sam. Very first drive, they drive down in dominant fashion and didn't really look back. They got up early, running the ball really well. Baker with maybe one of the best games of his career when we're talking efficiency, throw for throw. He finishes 24 of 30 for 294. No actual passing touchdowns, but Baker did fly through the air for a rushing touchdown. 4 different Bucks with rushing touchdowns: Bucky Irving, Rashad White, Baker Mayfield, and Sean Tucker.
Bucky Irving looks so good at the moment. His ability to create space is amazing from a running back. There's a lot of running backs that are good in space, but are not actually particularly good at getting into space. And there's quite a few guys like that. And it becomes like a sort of a play calling problem because you're like, man, how do we get this guy into space? He's so good in space, like blah, blah. But it's not that easy to get NFL players into space because NFL defenses are good. If you have a player that can actually create his own space, that's so invaluable because then you just let him have the ball, let him go to work. Like Bucky Irving's ability to find his own space is amazing so far, and like he's becoming an absolute find for them.
He's a real weapon, man. I mean, he has a 56-yard run, which became as big of a story. Of Baker Mayfield was down the field.
Oh, what a maniac!
Blocking for him. I know you were highlighting that last night. Baker's he also got a stinger in this game.
Baker?
Yes, he missed. Like he went to the medical tent for a stinger because he was, I don't know, diving. It wasn't the Bucky play. Like there was multiple times he was out there trying to block.
I like for somebody that's declared previously that I'm just in perpetuity out on Baker Mayfield. The man's really trying to pull me back in.
You got to be back in just for.
I do love watching Baker Mayfield play. The man is a certifiable maniac, and I love it. He's doing the cutlet celebration after the touchdown.
This is everything
He's running 30 yards downfield, blocking people for his running back. What's not to love?
We have to circle back on Bucky Irving. Look, Baker Mayfield, I know they were coming off a 4-game losing streak. Now they have an opportunity with an easier schedule, one of the easiest schedules in the second half to make a run. They came out firing after the bye. But when we loved Baker Mayfield as a prospect coming out of the 2018 draft, we said, look, throw for throw, outstanding. He was very efficient at Oklahoma. He was extremely accurate, makes plays outside of structure. And he always seemed like he had that, I hate using the phrase, that chip on the shoulder.
Yeah.
He always had that. But like that's the most I hate it because it's the most overused phrase in football analysis. But listen, we used to make the point that as the former underdog who had those stories, right? I'm going to walk on at Texas Tech and start as a freshman.
Yeah.
Never been done before at the FBS level. I'm going to show up in Bob Stoops' office at Oklahoma and say, hi, I'm your new quarterback. Bob Stoops is like, no, what are you talking about? He's like, no, I'm the guy. Wins the Heisman, goes number 1 overall. Always had that in him. And now things like doing the cutlets thing, like when he's the underdog and people are doubting him, I at the time, I thought that was what was going to make him special. I dare you to doubt Baker Mayfield because he's going to prove you wrong. And look, it didn't always happen the first 6 years of his career, but he's in this mode where maybe he's got some of that again.
He's this fascinating paradox of being an underdog former number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
It's usually not possible. But he multiple walk-ons, and now, despite being a number 1 overall pick, his career had been written off. Like he'd been dumped from multiple teams. Everyone had basically given up on him. The Bucs signed him for a $4 million deal when he won the starting job there, and it was basically the one spot in the NFL where there was like a starting job to be owned, like just by being better than Kyle Trask or whatever. And he wins the job, and suddenly he's their starting quarterback. Like he really is. It's difficult to do, but he is this perennial underdog, moxie story. He's like the spiritual successor to Ryan Fitzpatrick, except he has tools, right? Like Ryan Fitzpatrick had to put his life force into every 40-yard pass he ever made. Baker Mayfield's got one of the stronger arms in the NFL. Like he's not Josh Allen or, Anthony Richardson, but he's in the higher end of that bracket than he is the lower end. Baker Mayfield's got some arm and some athletic tools to him. And it means that when he puts it all together and you just get this high-end Baker performance, it is really good. Like you get reminded why the guy was a number 1 overall pick in a draft that contained Josh Allen, right? Like he's a really good player when he's on song.
Yeah, so I completely agree. He was very good in this game. So now they've got I just wanted to finish the Bucky Irving thought because he has the 56-yard run, finishes with 87 yards on 12 carries. Also caught all 6 of his targets. They give him a little swing screen, about 250 left before the half, and he's weaving through the defense for 32 yards. That helps set them up for their score before the half. Bucky Irving is an absolute weapon in the pass game and as a runner. Loved him coming out of Oregon. He had a bad combine, remember? And it's one of those, like, when the combine comes up again, it's like, oh, man, I personally, I think maybe I overrated that too much and forgot just how shifty he is and just how good of a runner he is.
Well, he had a bad combine, and when you watch his tape at Oregon, there was because of the offense they run, there's quite a lot of space there generally. So you have a guy who's really good in space being given quite a lot of space, which becomes challenging to figure out, well, okay, how does that work when he doesn't have that kind of space at the next level, particularly when you pair it with someone who doesn't have amazing athletic traits. Well, it turns out he's actually really good at generating that space in the first place. So you just look like the guy from Oregon. Like he's able to create that space, and then once he's in that space, he looks the same as he did in college, where he's just weaving throughout the defense. So, yeah, he's a fantastic player so far.
All right, now and then just to touch on the Giants really quickly.
So we covered yesterday the whole Daniel Jones saga, what they did,
we did.
benching him, cutting him, et cetera, on the Instant Reaction show. So you can go listen to that. We're not going to do it here on the basis that we got a lot of games to get through.
Got a lot to get to here. So Tommy DeVito did not give the boost to the Giants offense that he did last year.
No.
They couldn't get anything going. A big part of it was just the Bucs dominated offensively as well. Post-game quotes, Dexter Lawrence calls them soft, and Malik Neighbors calls the team soft. And Malik Neighbors is
getting pissed off,
doing wide, as people said, wide receiver one type stuff, where I don't get the ball till we're down 30, right? I mean, it's a little too late here.
And the funny thing is, they asked him about this. You saw the off-season Hard Knocks thing. Everyone's focusing on the sad John Mara and the Saquon stuff, but at they were focusing on the wide receiver thing as well. And one of the things they asked all these guys was like, hey, how do you react if things are going badly and you're not getting the ball? And he's like, I'm kind of pissed off. I'll be like, I want the ball. And they saw that as a good thing. They're like, yeah, we want that, that edge to a number one wide receiver. Well, now you're dealing with the edge because you didn't get him the ball enough and you're getting your ass kicked. Now how does it seem? So just be careful what you wish for.
And then I just want to say I've done some interviews with Giants media in the last couple months, and we've talked about it on the show. We did the Giants autopsy already on the show here. I've been personally
dead.
What's that?
They remain dead.
They're deader now.
Yeah.
I've been a little wishy-washy, I would say, about Joe Shane and Brian Daboll. I've been a little apologetic because they've got a pretty decent rookie class, and they've been more competitive this year. A game like this, it's a simple game, but against a Bucs team that's good, potentially playoff bound, but not great, and they don't even have a chance. And part of it is, look, is there a decision from the top that we're rolling with Tommy DeVito from Thanksgiving on, and we're just going to lose, and it's okay? But this was one of the few games where they weren't even competitive from start to finish, and now there's even more questions about Daboll, Joe Shane, their future. Like if they play like this every week, there are going to be some issues.
They're copying the crappy end of all the kind of optic stuff, right? Like I tweeted that they got waxed 30-7, and it was only the second worst L they took yesterday because on primetime Sunday night later in the day, Saquon goes off for 300 yards, and it's like, look at these idiots. They let this guy walk out of the building. Now, I think that's just a crappy, lazy narrative, right? I think they were actually right to let him walk out of the building because if you put Saquon on the Giants, it wouldn't look much better, right? He wouldn't look like he looks now on the Giants. He would look like he looked on the Giants. We've seen this already. Like, it's not like we don't know what Saquon looks like on the Giants.
I'll repeat it later, but Saquon's now officially averaging 2 more yards per carry this year with the Eagles than he did over the last 3 years with the Giants.
Right.
6.1 to 4.1 right now.
So it's not like we don't know how he would look on this team. So I think that's a bad way of looking at this, right? I think the smartest thing they did in this whole last couple of off seasons was draw a financial line in the sand and say Saquon on this team is not worth more than this price, right? What they did is get greedy and tried to keep him anyway and keep Daniel Jones, whereas really they should have let him walk the season before and just said, we're going to franchise tag Daniel Jones. If that works out, great. If it doesn't, fine. And then we're a year further on in fixing it. But this is the problem with it's the whole world is sort of narrative driven, right? Like now you bench and then cut Daniel Jones. I'm sure there are people in the locker room who think Daniel Jones was the best QB there and, was sort of unfortunate and all this thing. Now you got cutlets. The whole thing goes badly. You get owned. There's Dexter Lawrence out here saying we've kind of given up. Not we, but like the team isn't fighting the way it needs to. We're soft, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's tapped out. Like at that point, it becomes hard to rescue the people in charge. Like, someone tends to take the fall for that kind of outcome. So even if you're sort of looking big picture, like, okay, what is the overall trajectory here? Are these the right people to make these decisions going forward? It becomes hard not to hold somebody accountable for, like, the current state of things. And that's the problem with all this here, is that you can construct an argument for Joe Schoen in either direction right now, right? You can say you made a total mess of the Daniel Jones Saquon dynamic. You're out of here. You have to hold the can for that. Or you can say your draft class looks amazing and you got Malik Neighbors and actually you've made a lot of smart moves, right? We think you're the guy. I think you can make a reasonable case in either direction right now, right? But it becomes very difficult to say you're the guy whilst this is the current state of the franchise.
Yeah, and it's Saquon, but it's also Xavier McKinney making plays, Leonard Williams making plays.
That's not helping.
There's also other players that have left, making plays around the league. So, all right, we got to move on. Get no more use for this game. Is it so the Giants are coming back on Thanksgiving. They'll be back here Thursday. Giants at Dallas. Dallas with the win yesterday against the Commanders.
And probably.
As 10-point underdogs here. Dallas gets the win 34-26. They moved to 4-7. Commanders moved to 7-5. What a wild game. I think do you have a list of all the craziness here?
Yeah, let me find it.
Find Ari's
Ari
tweet.
Meroff had a tweet about it that summed it up.
Both teams just trying to lose. Special teams.
Yeah,
craziness
special
in
teams
this one.
insanity in this game. Plus, also just the fourth quarter. I mean, this was like a 10-9 or something game going into the fourth quarter. Special teams in the Dallas-Washington game today has had a blocked field goal, a blocked punt, 3 missed field goals, 2 missed extra points, a 99-yard kickoff return, and an onside kickoff return touchdown. And that was almost all at the end of the game.
And a lot of that was in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Dallas was getting ready to pull the upset, and then Washington, it's 27-20. Washington's got 33 seconds left, and at their own 14, the game's pretty much over at this point. Except Jaden Daniels hits Terry McLaurin for 86 yards, hits him with the little hole shot in between the defense, and then it was one of those plays. It was like the Miami Miracle when you saw, I think it was Kenyon Drake, and you're like, oh my gosh, he's got the angle. Right? Like in one of those improbable plays when you're watching this live and then you realize, oh wait, this could go.
Yeah. It's always amazing sometimes how few players you need to beat if you can just take the right angle at the right time. Like I'm watching this
fast.
Because this happens, right? And you're like, how did that happen? Like, who screwed up on the Dallas defense for that to happen? How many guys took a ridiculous angle, made a stupid play for this to work? And you watch it back and you're like, there's really only one guy who even takes like a false step on this play for McLaurin to just gash the entire defense. Outside of that, it's just everyone's more or less where they should be, and the ball's just in the right place at the right time, and all he has to do is wrong foot the one guy and then beat him for speed on the outside. Like it's remarkably easy sometimes if you get all the angles right to just destroy an entire NFL defense.
So that's what McLaurin did for 86 yards to make it 27-26.
To tie it up, essentially, except tying it up requires a kicker.
Except the Commanders missed the extra point.
Yeah.
And then they come back, and so they have to go onside kick with 14 seconds left. And the Cowboys take it to the house. On the onside kick, one of those, you just jump up,
well, the
grab
onside
it.
kick just like pops up to one of the up guys,
and take it to the
suddenly
house.
Nobody in front of him.
And then you're watching the whole thing, and Mike McCarthy's over there like, it's still going to be an 8-point game.
Yeah,
so we still have to have another onside kick.
Because he doesn't go down.
We have to kick the ball off to Washington now.
Because the guy who gets the onside kick, instead of going down and ending the game, decides to score.
So the other thing, the Cowboys end up winning by 8. It didn't matter, but they still had another Hail Mary attempt. Washington, they had an opportunity there. I mentioned the River City relay last night. You didn't remember the play offhand. Do you remember the play?
Yeah, once you described it, I remember.
So I encourage our younger listeners or the older listeners to refresh their memory. One of the most ridiculous plays in NFL history, 2003, the Byron Leftwich's Jacksonville Jags. This was after Mark had been benched this particular season. Byron Leftwich's Jaguars
What a
are up 20
whole
to
world.
13, and the Saints are on their own 25 with 7 seconds left. They throw a long pass. They do a little pitchy woo-woo. They get into the end zone to make it 20 to 19. I mean, one of the craziest plays in NFL history. It would be more famous if they had not missed the extra point and just lost by 1. But it should have saved it was reminiscent of that. The fact that the Commanders have this insane play to potentially, I don't want to say save their season. Like, they're 7-5 now. They already had the Hail Mary to somewhat, save things. But this, if this got them to 8-4 and, still in the thick of it in the NFC, look, they're still the number 7 seed. But this would have been an epic all-time play for Washington, and then they missed the extra point.
These are the plays that aggravate me the most in terms of kickers.
You said cancel kicking.
These are the plays. It's like whatever about a random missed field goal at some point in the game. Like, they executed one of the most insane plays of all time to tie the game, and then a dude is just out there to make it formal, just to dot the I's and the T's, like make it legal, make it official. You shanked the extra point and missed, the whole play doesn't count anymore. It's irrelevant now because you couldn't execute the simple formality of the extra point. Who wants that? Like, who's out here going, yeah, that's a better outcome. I now prefer this play because the kicker missed the extra point. Nobody. It's worse. It's objectively worse because we let a kicker determine that.
Just lose extra points overall.
Lose them. Get rid of them. Don't want them.
Not even 2-point conversions. Just nothing.
By the way,
just get 6.
So in addition to all the crazy special teams miscues, like every other big play in this game was also a miscue of some other variety, right? Like Jaden Daniels throws an interception because Brian Robinson double catches it, and before he got the second one, it fell into the belly of a defensive lineman. Pick. Dallas got a touchdown because Washington's defense dropped coverage entirely on Lou Schoonmaker up the seam. That's a touchdown. Almost every big play, Johnny Newton had a forced fumble on Rico Dowdle. This was just wall-to-wall ridiculous errors of one description or another.
And what you had mentioned earlier, I mean, it felt like same old Dallas early on. You got Brandon Aubrey, because it's part of Ari's tweet there, but blocked field goal and a missed field goal in the first quarter alone.
Yeah.
And then in the second quarter, Washington blocks a punt. So if you're from Dallas's perspective, it's just like, okay, there's a losing team this year, just playing like a losing team so far.
Even the Cavante Turpin kick return touchdown, he dropped the kick. He had to pick it up off the turf and then sort of wanders his way into the line and then just goes, spin.
That was
immediate
sick,
space. And then houses it.
That was sick.
Every play in this game was some kind of catastrophe
Doesn't
or other.
that, when you muff the kick, doesn't it just seem to throw off the coverage often? I mean, sometimes you get smoked and you're
It was a
tackled at the
remarkable
5,
lack of.
but
Cavante Turpin, I've noticed, as a kick returner, has an interesting style where he does not bring it out quickly. He kind of jogs out of the end zone, right, for the first 15 yards or so to judge the space. Lets it sort of, the way, sort of patience for a running back. You let the blocking unfold in front of you a little bit and then boom, you burst through the hole. Turpin kind of kick returns the same way. He jogs it out of the end zone, lets the space develop a little bit, lets the blocking do its thing, and then bam! Once he actually reads the space, he explodes and tries to take it the gap. He did that anyway on this play, but I think also the dropping bought him an extra half second, and created a bit more space. And then really once he made the spin move, one guy overran his gap, and he's got a lane.
He's made some big-time plays the last couple weeks. I know Dallas this is their first win in a while, first win since week 5. But Turpin's made some huge plays there. So Dallas moves to 4-7. They did a really nice job in the run game. When we're talking matchups, that was one. I mean, every single week I've been highlighting how bad Dallas's run defense has been. They were much better in this game. Held Austin Eckler to just 22 yards on 9 carries. Brian Robinson to just 13 yards on 5 carries. Jaden Daniels had some scrambles in there, so they're going to finish with 145 yards on the ground. But Daniels was the leading rusher by a mile with 74 yards and a touchdown in there as well. Is Washington Cliff Kingsbury was asked about second half collapses.
The whole team.
Last week. Is the whole Washington team getting Kingsburied?
I think
here.
this was the best Daniels has played since he got the rib injury. I know, like, the stats aren't going to look great. Get a couple of interceptions, but like I said, one of them off the hands of his running back into a defensive lineman's gut. And in particular, late in the game when he needed the plays, he stood up and made some plays. He had a touchdown run that was really nice, like an option play. Ben Sinnott had an amazing block, just pancaked Deron Bland on that play. So I think this was the most impressed I've been by Daniels since he got the rib injury, which is an encouraging thing for them. But, you know, the defense that we said had become really good, not just improved, but actually was playing really well, didn't play that well in this game against Dallas with Cooper Rush, a quarterback in the worst running game in the NFL. That's not great.
And Rush did a good job. I mean, he was far more efficient in this game. And I thought his first couple outings, a little overwhelmed, miscommunications, just nothing. They tried to get the ball to CeeDee Lamb, didn't get a whole lot going, but I think, opened some other things up in this game.
I forget who
one of the better games of Cooper Rush's career.
Yeah, I forget who the announcing team
was
in this game, but they were saying, when they talked to Cooper Rush during the week, he had sort of said, look, yeah, I mean, one of the things you forget when you're talking about these guys that are backups and sit for ages is that the dude hasn't done anything for a long time, right? So Cooper Rush was sort of saying, yeah, like he'd been so cold, like so rusty. Like rust, right? We talk about this for starting quarterbacks. If they've been out for a long time, man, he's going to knock the rust off. Well, imagine a backup who's not supposed to start and doesn't start for like a year or two and then comes back in. They got to knock the rust off as well. So Cooper Rush was like, yeah, my footwork was all over the place. Like I just wasn't dialed in, right? Now, you can make an argument that that's his job and he should be, but it's a real thing to be like, it makes sense for him to be rusty in week one. Now he's back in the groove again. So, if you want to make an argument in favor of Cooper Rush, Skip, you would say, well, week one he was rusty. He's sitting on the bench for a long time. Now he's got the rust off, and this is the real Cooper Rush. And, through 2 weeks, that argument would hold up.
You think we're back?
I don't know if it'll hold up next week, but through 2 weeks, that's an argument you can make.
Cooper Rush, we're back, baby. We're back.
Week one, you have to knock the rust off. Week two, good to go.
Is there a video of Skip pulling the jersey out of the trash and throwing it back on? Is that going to happen?
I think he recycles them all. Like, now that the video is in the can, I can put it back in the closet.
One thing you were right about.
Yeah.
Dallas on the road. You get out of
pressure's off
the dome.
Yeah.
Right? You get out of Curtain Gate controversy. Mm-hmm. There's no sun in your eyes in gloomy Washington.
Don't have to worry about giant chunks of metal falling off the roof onto you.
Yeah. There's no cowboy fan tours distracting you while you're getting your lift in. Right? You leave the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Yeah. Nothing but good vibes on the road.
And Dallas is better.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, they have to go back there for Thanksgiving.
That's not great.
And then on the other hand, Cutlets is coming to town. One thing I forgot to mention about the Giants thing, like the Giants, it could be a 1-week experiment with Tommy Cutlets. It could have been so bad that Drew Lock, who has been, that the people who criticize the Giants for skipping over Drew Lock may have been the most fair criticism of the Giants, to the point where by the time you're listening to this, I have a feeling Drew Lock might be announced as the starter and the Cutlets experiment only lasted a week. I'm just setting up for Thursday's turkey nap game, Cooper Rush and Drew Lock or Tommy Cutlets.
Yeah, certainly possible.
Just saying. So, yeah, good win. Good win by the Cowboys. Anything else?
Nope.
On this one. Let's go Miami Dolphins with the win over the New England Patriots. 34-15. It was 31-0 at one point.
Yeah, I was going to say it wasn't that close.
It was not this close. Patriots were very close to the backdoor cover because the Dolphins just kind of muffed a handoff for fumble 6 from Christian Gonzalez. But, yeah, this was last year's Miami team. If there's one thing I may have overlooked in this matchup, Tua and the Dolphins, I think I highlighted a little bit in the preview show, but Tua and the Dolphins had played outstanding against the Patriots over the last few years. Tua was like undefeated against New England, I think, remains the same. And the offense just continues to cook. Tua goes 29 of 40 for 317, 4 touchdowns, no picks. And as one Patriots beat writer was talking about, it looked like the Harlem Globetrotters playing ball against New England's defense because they had all the trickeration going, all the misdirection, like you mentioned last year's Miami Dolphins offense.
I saw somebody else say that Tua was playing like Magic Johnson both of those comments are clearly all based off that one play with what looked like the wing tee where he just like drops it out behind himself, no look. Okay.
I thought the other stuff. I mean, I wanted to watch. I went and rewatched all of Jalen Waddle's targets and everything, but like I got that same vibe just watching Tua run the offense. Not he's Magic Johnson, but eye discipline, feel.
This was
the touchdown to Waddle was just a quick hitter and he weaves through the defense. I mean, Tua's feeling real comfortable right now.
And the second Tua came back into the lineup, the offense was different and it did click back into gear and it looked really good. This, I think, is the first time though that it looked like early last season when it was blowtorching the NFL and was setting records and just looking like the best team in football, or at least the best offense in football. This, I think, was the first time it looked like that, and it was just everything was working. That's the second time I can think of, by the way, where they've done that like no look, drop it out the back, just pop pass thing right into the arms of a guy circling behind him in orbit motion or whatever. At some point, it's going to be top tier hilarity though when the timing of that gets jacked somehow and Tua just nonchalantly like drops a live ball into the backfield. That's going to be funny.
Yeah,
just setting the stage for that to happen somewhere down the line. When it works, it's great. It's amazing. Everyone's in their bag, like
probably in
this.
A cold weather playoff game.
Yeah. It's magic. And then at
in
some
the snow
point,
against Buffalo, or
something is going to happen, and the timing of that play is going to get messed somehow. And Tua's just going to have this cartoon-like, no-look, nonchalant fumble into the backfield, and someone's going to fall on the ball. It's going to be hilarious. But for the moment, it's a great play. Genuinely, can you imagine defending that? It's like we've got pulling offensive linemen going one way, then pulling offensive linemen coming the other way, nonchalant, no-look, pop pass. Like, I can't even imagine trying to defend something like that. And it showed. I mean, look at the play.
So here's what we have over these. Really quick, the one little difference from last year's offense, when they were dominating early last year, it was a lot of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, 1-2 punch. Tyreek was going for 150 yards a game early in the season. He still hasn't lit up the stat sheet, right? It's been a Jonnu Smith game. So that's what's interesting. This is the first time they really got Jalen Waddle involved, 8 catches for 144 and that touchdown. Jonnu Smith, man, they've been adding the tight end component. I know Jonnu Smith was kind of like a punching bag for Arthur Smith jokes because he was the one getting red zone targets and end arounds instead of the dudes in Atlanta last year, and he struggled with New England a couple years ago. But Jonnu Smith's always been pretty athletic tight end who can catch the ball and do some stuff, and Miami's getting him involved. And I still think Tyreek Hill has the ability to pop off at any point, but it's a little bit different the way they're spreading the ball around, but certainly similar to last year as far as the efficiency, the confidence with which Tua runs this offense. And again, in these QB debate discussions, and Tua and Herbert and Burrow and Jordan Love are all in the same draft class. Jalen Hurts, all in the same draft class. And no one wants to pick Tua first from a skill set standpoint because the arm strength and this and that. But Tua's anticipation and quick release and feel for the game is such a good fit for this offense. And I feel like we learn this again every single week, the way this offense looks with Tua versus, again, what we've seen without him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he clearly needs the other element, the Mike McDaniel element of this, right? I think Burrow, Herbert, I think Burrow certainly. Herbert has had a journey depending on the coach that's been with him. But I think you can say, look, you can plug those guys into any offense and they probably still look the same. I think it's clear that Tua needs the Mike McDaniel element of the offense, but when that's there, like when he is in the correct system for his skill set, it is reasonable to say, like, that dude operates this system to a degree that rivals anybody else. Now, maybe that needs not just McDaniel, but it also needs Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and all the speed in the backfield and all those kinds of things. But I do think that people unfairly malign what Tua can do, like his ceiling, what he can actually bring to the table, because it isn't top-tier tools and because the guy's known more for concussions than he is for his actual play on the field. But, I mean, you can't argue with what happens when everybody's healthy and this thing is in sync. It is devastating, even against good defenses.
I think the bias occurs when I feel like Tua, Burrow, and Brock Purdy all get dinged for tools, even at the NFL level. Even when they're sitting here, and Purdy gets dinged for having Shanahan. But they all get dinged for tools at the NFL level when it's like Joe Burrow's arm strength is not an issue.
No.
Right? Because we're not prospects anymore. We're not putting theoretical ceilings on these people. Like Joe Burrow has zero arm strength issues at the NFL level. Nothing that pops up where you're like, oh man, he just can't make a couple of these throws and he's working around it. Tua doesn't really have massive limitations, but you're just underrating the other parts of his game. The other place where you were right.
I like today.
I just remember. I actually remember the couple times you were right this week. Chop Robinson not only having a huge game, but actually tackling the quarterback for a sack. He had there were a couple, let's say, non-competitive reps from the Patriots offensive line. Okay, and Chop Robinson was a big part of that. First run on PFF had him with 10 pressures, and some of those were dominant. It was one sack, and I had him looking through those a lot of his key plays 3 times where he was responsible for forcing incompletions from Drake May, either hitting him while throwing or just being directly in his face and affecting the throw. Chop Robinson was an absolute difference maker for the Dolphins.
Yeah, he had a really good game. I mean, I don't think this was the most difficult one in the world to see coming based off the offensive line that he was going up against, but a good thing that he took advantage of that and really wrecked Chop. I mean, everyone's focusing on correctly Jared Verse and how amazing he's been looking. Latu, I think, is coming on. Bit of a slower development for Dallas Turner. I always felt that Chop Robinson was a little bit overlooked as the 4th guy in that sort of group. It was seen as a big 3. Like, which one of the 3 do you like? Verse, Turner, Latu, and then, oh, by the way, you could get Chop Robinson in the 2nd round maybe. It's like I always felt he was kind of closer to that group than those guys because of what he could do as a pass rusher if you really spool him up. We're starting to see that now. And, okay, against the Patriots, you're going to see it the most, but the last few weeks, he's really been coming on as an edge rusher.
He has. The other play. So from a Drake May perspective, we won't break down his performance too much, but I thought this was one of the first games where Drake May's elevated this offense a lot this season. This was one of the first games where I just thought the pressure, everything else was too much to overcome. I mean, one of those Chop Robinson plays, Drake May makes a beautiful throw on 3rd and 15, and Keyshawn Butte just falls over.
Right.
Like, just falls right over what should have been a completion. Again, I come out of this game mostly impressed by Drake May. They did have an opportunity to come back. It was when it was 31-15, again, after the Dolphins just muff a handoff, give up a touchdown to New England. It's a 2-score game. It's a 16. There's a chance for New England to come back with about 5 minutes left in the 4th quarter. Newly signed Tyrell Dotson with a beautiful interception, just kind of peels off of his coverage, makes a one-handed interception to essentially seal the deal for Miami. But overall, I think similar vibes as far as Drake May goes. Like, I'm curious to know what it looks like when they have 2 tackles, that could actually block, and they have a little more receiving talent. I also think that it's going to be really tough. New England's offensive personnel feels so far behind that's going to be really tough to fix it in an offseason. And then you think about the defense too. It's the same defense that they had last year, which personnel-wise looks okay, not great. And I don't think they fixed this roster in an offseason. That's going to be a challenge.
No, it is. Yeah, this was the game, one of those games where it's like, oh, I've been very impressed by Drake May, but sooner or later you just are less talented than the opposition to a degree that means the game is not going to happen. So there just wasn't anything he could do in this game individually.
One last thing, Marcus Jones, he got beaten a bunch, but 3 pass breakups. He had some epic battles with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Marcus Jones, really good player for New England. I saw some other people comparing him to Travis Hunter. He said he's their Travis Hunter with his potential 2-way ability. They didn't put him on offense this week, though.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
But we both love Marcus Jones. He's like one of their pieces to build around as a slot corner.
Yeah.
Who could play outside. So he did some nice things in this game. Anything else here?
Nope.
Miami, I just wanted to highlight where's Miami's schedule here. We've been talking about them as, sneaking up on people here for the number 7 seed. They're in the mix. They're a game and a half behind Denver. They're 5-6. The Thursday night game's starting to look pretty nice now. So Thursday night, Thanksgiving night, Dolphins at Green Bay.
Yeah, big game for them.
I'm in this same feeling of last year with the Dolphins. Great, you beat New England. Great, you beat the Raiders, and you're Showtime, and you're doing Lakers stuff. Can you win on the road? Can you win against good teams? That test is Thanksgiving night here against the Packers this week.
Yep. Their schedule, I mean, that's a lot of winnable games coming up. Like the Green Bay game is the toughest game on their schedule. I mean, San Francisco, they have, number one, it's at home. Number two, the 49ers have lost a lot of games at this stage, so that's maybe not as tough as it looked. Houston are a lot wobblier than they looked. So, I mean, it's tough. They put themselves against the wall, but
chance to do some damage.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get to the other games, but first, got to tell you about our friends over at PFF. PFF's got you covered all season long with the best data, tools, and analysis in the game. Sign up for PFF Plus today to unlock all of their famous player grades and premium stats. Push to the playoffs in your fantasy league with in-season tools and award-winning rankings from our friend, fantasy expert Nathan Yonke, and stay connected to the next generation of talent with the best NFL draft coverage on the planet. No matter what you're looking for, PFF Plus has what you need to make winning decisions. Visit PFF.com and sign up today for less than $10 per month. PFF Plus, powering winning decisions. All right, let's go. Tennessee Titans with the win over the Houston Texans, 32-27. Titans move to 3-8. Texans fall to 7-5. Another game where just wild stuff happening down the stretch, and impressive by Tennessee. We'll talk a little Will Levis and what happened there, but from a Houston perspective, have to be really disappointed with this effort and coming away with a game where you have a pick six, 8 sacks of Will Levis, and you get the loss. There's a tweet about that.
I was going to say, the 8 sacks thing is pretty ridiculous.
Like
one of the things.
Let me just read it real quick from Josh Dubois, who his weekly appearance on Check the Mic here. Josh says teams in the Super Bowl era were 51-2 in regular season and playoffs with 8+ sacks and a pick six before the Texans loss. The only other losses were the Browns in the 15-10 game against Mark Brunell's Jags in 2001. Bottlegate, that was the Bottlegate game.
It's always Mark Brunell.
It's always Brunell. And then the 99 Patriots 31-30 against the Dolphins. They had 2 pick sixes in that game. So yeah, Brunell's Jags in there.
Yeah.
In 01.
I mean, this is the thing when everyone's kind of ripping Will Levis and the team's giving up on him and they're in sell mode, they trade away DeAndre Hopkins, etc. Okay, he had kind of earned that. Like, he'd played his way out of future consideration by the way he played earlier in the season, the meme quarterback thing. But it is still a pretty crappy offensive line. He now doesn't have his number one target from earlier in the season, and that's bumped everybody up the depth chart one, which is the opposite of the way you want to do things. It's not like it's the greatest situation in the world for Will Levis, and in this game, the offensive line was getting wrecked. Like, Nicholas Petit-Frere on the right side is just a subpar offensive tackle. J.C. Latham, who's actually been pretty good this season, was going up against Will Anderson, so he was getting his ass handed to him in this game. So Levis getting sacked 8 times, okay, some of that is on him and the way he deals with the pressure, but a lot of it isn't. And to still have a reasonable performance and make a lot of good plays, and okay, one really bad interception in there, but like, you sort of forget that this is actually a pretty bad situation for whoever the quarterback is, and it is Levis in this situation.
Let's talk Levis for a minute here then. I went through all 8 sacks, for the context there.
For the context.
And especially for, I think we have like 2 different audiences sometimes, so I want to speak to both of them. We have our dedicated audio podcast and video, YouTube. You guys show up every single week and listen to us, and then these game recaps often go out into the ether, and we reach a newer audience and slightly different group of people. And I just want to encourage you, like, when you see a quarterback get sacked 8 times, it's not always on the offensive line. More often than not, we talk about the quarterback's role in there. But as you mentioned, there were some plays in here where J.C. Latham, I mentioned non-competitive before, some non-competitive reps.
I mean,
against Donnell Hunter and Will Anderson on a couple sacks.
There was one inside move in particular. Remember, like you said, training camp, Latham had struggled with inside moves.
Yes.
Preseason, it was a thing. I mean, Anderson, for at least one play, really got it with an inside move. It's like Latham wasn't even there.
He looked like he was looking for help that didn't exist.
Yeah.
That wasn't there.
Right.
So of the 8 sacks, there were definitely some plays where you can see the wheels turning in Will Levis's head, where he's like, Coach told me don't flip it. Coach told me don't do anything stupid. Coach told me don't do anything stupid. Like, he ran into a couple of them.
Yeah.
And they were, 2-yard loss, 3-yard loss. There's a couple plays where it's covered, and he's like, don't flip it. Don't flip it. You could tell.
Don't be a meme. Don't be a meme. Don't be a meme. Don't be a meme.
And so he's been sacked, Levis, 20 times in his last 3 games. So here's the the dichotomy here. Here's the challenge in figuring out Will Levis's performance. At one point yesterday, he had 3 incompletions. One of them was a pick 6, which was all his fault and a horrible misread.
Yep.
And he had been sacked 8 times. So when he's pulled the trigger, thrown the ball, overall it's been good. Still has the bad pick 6 in there. Some of the sacks are on him. Some of them are truly on the offensive line, and he's got no chance. I don't care who you are, you're not.
Yeah.
Like he probably should have been sacked 4 or 5 times per game over the last few weeks, 3 or 4 times, whatever it is.
Which
and
is bad.
It's turned into 6, 7, or 8, right? So there's some Levis doesn't want to turn the ball over, and there's some the offensive line has no chance. But he also, over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever the cutoff is, over 100 yards more than any other quarterback on those 30-plus yard throws. Hits Nick Westbrook-Akina for a 38-yard touchdown.
Again.
Hits Calvin Ridley for a beautiful 63-yard deep ball. Like the big plays have been a part of this Titans offense without Nuke Hopkins over these last few weeks.
This is kind of what I expected Will Levis to look like this season, right? Where there's still some bad in there, obviously. Like the pick 6 was a terrible play. It wasn't a meme play, but it was like the one earlier where he just like the Jair Alexander interception, right? Where he just stared down a guy that was always going to be there and threw the ball right to him. Or I forget what the other game was, but the other one where he literally came off the field being like, I never saw him. Like I don't know where that guy came from. I literally never saw him. This was like that, where it's like he just threw the ball to a defender that was right in his pathway and never saw him again, or misread the coverage and assumed he was going to track somebody else and vacate the space that he was. He didn't. He just stood there and caught the ball that Levis threw him. Terrible play. But so you're going to get the bad in there, but you got the good to offset some of that bad. That's kind of what I expected Will Levis to look like. And earlier in the season, the real problem, I mean, the memes were obviously the thing everyone focused on, but the big problem is he wasn't offsetting those with anything. It was just, there's nothing happening here from a productive, positive standpoint, and there's at least one meme a week. That's terrible. That's why pretty quickly I think Callahan determined he's just not the guy. Like I got nothing to work with here. I just got a guy who's making a catastrophe every 4 quarters or so, or 3, and there's no good to hang my hat off. I can't work with anything here. Now I think you're seeing quite a lot of good. I mean, he averaged 11.6 yards per attempt in this game. The deep pass again to Nick Westbrook-Akina, and then, okay, there's one really terrible play in there, but he's not alone in that. There's a lot of quarterbacks that make one glaring bad mistake-ish a game, but it's definitely steps in the right direction. I think it's probably too little too late for his career, if for no other reason than he was a second-round draft pick. They don't have the kind of investment, the kind of like sunk cost in him that a first-round pick does, where you just get a little bit more leeway and a little bit more time and benefit of the doubt. But this is kind of what I expected Levis to look like earlier in the year. It's just taken half the year to get here.
We'll talk about it. I think it's next game, talking about Carolina. Bryce Young looking better, Will Levis looking better, to the point where as of 4 weeks ago, you would say, well, of course the Titans are going to be in the market for a quarterback, and they still might be.
Yeah.
And you would say, of course the Panthers are in the market for a quarterback, but Bryce Young's played well enough that maybe you're rethinking it. But to your point, Bryce Young, number 1 overall pick, even if it was a different coaching staff. With the Titans and Levis, it was like, all right, we'll take a swing in the second round, and we'll reset in 2 years if we need to. I think it's closer enough where you're at least rethinking things with Levis. The flow of this game, again, wild. I mean, the Texans have an 80-yard kickoff return to start the game. First play from scrimmage, 19-yard touchdown. The Texans are supposed to be the better team, supposed to be a powerhouse in the AFC. That kind of makes sense. Titans battle back. Titans are up 23-17, playing underdog, pesky underdog role. Levis throws the pick 6. Now the Texans are back up 24-13. They go up 27-13 because Fairbairn hits his 12th 50-plus yard field goal of the season. That's a record. So you want to eliminate all this great kicking stuff. You want to eliminate all of it.
Yeah,
then Levis,
what do you do lader?
Because of what happens later. Then Levis hits Chigakonkwo, the tight end, for his only catch of the game for 70 yards. A little shallow cross, a little crossing route, weaves through the Texans' defense. Again, the Texans' defense, they're closing in on Browns territory for me. Pass rush, a lot of they create difficult throws and make it difficult to navigate the pocket, and before you know it, they're busting coverages left and right and giving up big plays. So it's 30-27 Titans. Fairbairn's Now has a chip shot field goal opportunity to tie it late in the game, and he just misses it. Just misses it.
The other thing, though, so this was a bit like the Dallas-Washington game where the teams are just trading losing plays, right? They're trading plays to try and get, like, blow the lead or blow the game across the board. I mean, so very first play of the game was like an 80-yard kick return by Dameon Pierce where he runs into a brick wall and then just like, runs around it, and he's got 80 yards. Like, for the entire game, again, like that Dallas-Washington game, there's just botched plays all over the place. The Titans just another thing that doesn't serve Levis, like in addition to the meme plays and catastrophes, his timing isn't great. And I don't mean like the routine passing timing. I mean, when he makes the bad play, tends to be a bad time as well.
Yeah,
I don't know how controllable that is. Yeah. I don't know how controllable that is, or like whether it is actually a trait of his, or if he's just been unlucky that he's timed his bad plays for bad times. But like they botch an exchange with Tony Pollard, I think, when they're up 3 in a game where you're the underdog, you're trying to pull an upset. You can't just put the ball on the ground with a simple handoff. And I think, to be fair, that one was Pollard's mistake rather than his. But like, Stroud gets picked off. You're like, oh, look, your defense made a play again. And that's when you give him the pick 6 right back. Come on. Just keep it together for like 5 minutes. So I was going to get back to the missed field goal. In the long line of blown plays, the Texans had a touchdown, which they had taken off the board because of an illegal shift goof where 2 guys moved when only one was supposed to. They specifically were putting a guy in motion, and 2 of them went, and they snapped the ball.
Tank Dell and Joe Mixon.
And it looked like Mixon's goof based off how everybody reacted after that play. But the point being, they had a touchdown on the board and had it taken off because of a play a technical thing that didn't really affect the touchdown, which then ended up in that field goal attempt, which they then missed. That ends up being a 7-point screw-up by somebody, probably Mixon. Like, that's a bad mistake.
Yeah, those last week they had the 70-yard touchdown by Nico Collins negated by illegal man downfield.
Somebody tweeted that Nico Collins has had more touchdowns negated than he has scored this season.
I believe it, dude. He looks so. I mean, he's back and he looks so good, so fast. He had a nice red zone touchdown in the game and. Deep ball in the game. They had Tank Dell behind the defense early. I wanted to talk C.J. Stroud really quickly because I thought early on he looked good. Second half, though, end of the first half, he throws a pick. That was a miscommunication. I don't know exactly what was going on there. He was throwing a slant, so receiver was slowed up. And then the interception later was Stroud looking like Bryce Young in the pocket last year, right? Double clutch, throw the ball right to a linebacker. It was bad. Like, this was some bad plays from C.J. Stroud in there, including that interception in the second half. Probably his worst.
Well, also, I mean, not just the interception, but so apparently he was asked about, the turnovers early in the week. And we kind of replied with, look, shoot or shoot. I got to keep taking the shots. Everyone misses them, blah, blah, blah. He's making the bad mistakes. I mean, he ran out of the end zone. He went full Orlovsky to basically end the game. Contrast that with the player from last year where he looked cool under pressure at all times, barely made any mistakes. Looked like again that Georgia game in college, the playoff game where he was basically flawless in the toughest of situations. He was that guy all the time. And this year, you're starting to see him regress more into the other version of C.J. Stroud from Ohio State, where actually when you put the pressure on, there were a lot of mistakes and a lot of errors. And, I mean, I just can't – that one play, the Orlovsky, full Orlovsky, you could not imagine him doing that last year. Like, it didn't compute with the player he was, where everything was cool. He always had the answer. For that guy to now reach the stage where he runs out of the back of the end zone to avoid pressure is crazy.
It's not a full Orlovsky.
It was pretty full Orlovsky.
There was more pressure than one guy. Face and a compressing pocket.
Yeah.
And it's 3rd and 17.
I think that's the only time that's happened. Like, get rid of it. Don't run out of the end zone.
It's like the
Orlovsky was under pressure too. Jared Allen was chasing him down. I know that because Jared Allen was pointing and mocking him when it happened.
Less unforced. I mean, there's no room to even step up as I'm rewatching this. There's a little bit. I mean, but it's He's got little chance here.
Get rid of it.
By the way, let's not forget Jimmy Garoppolo did it last year. More unprompted, or was it last year or 2 years ago? More unprompted than, or as unprompted as Orlovsky.
Well, he only took like a step, though. Like, he only just touched out. So the thing that made Orlovsky so beautiful is that he just like ran right out of it and just kept going.
This one was,
I hadn't realized.
The pass blocking was poor here. And look, there's always confounding variables with QB analysis, but we're always like the level-headed, cautious people. But even as level-headed and cautious as we've been, I thought Stroud was so impressive last year. I'm like, all right, future star. This is the year. He should take that step forward. And it does look like he's regressed. And again, there's been injuries. There's been offensive line issues. But he's just not playing the same way, and especially over these last few weeks, not liking the way Stroud's playing right now.
No.
And I'm just going to say, if you're looking at year two quarterbacks over the last few weeks, Bryce Young probably playing the best football out of any of them. C.J. Stroud playing the worst football out of any of them. Between Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, just telling you. That's what I'm seeing, Sam.
Okay.
What do you think?
I'm remaining silent so that is entirely your take, not mine.
You can agree with it at any time.
Mm-hmm. Noted. It's
true over the last 4 weeks, isn't it?
Maybe.
All right. Do you have anything else on this? The Houston, I mean, again, from a Texans perspective, this is a tough one.
Yeah.
This is finding new ways to lose.
Yeah, that's
in a Titans special teams that wanted to give it to you, right?
Yeah, I mean,
handed you a touchdown early on, handed you a pick six, Titans offense,
and a muff punt, right?
punt.
Jaquan Jackson.
Yeah.
Tennessee was actively trying to give this away for brief periods. It's just Houston was trying harder, and they they succeeded in giving it away the most. It is, like the Texans have been a weird team this year because every time you kind of look up, it feels like their record should be worse than it is, and now it's getting there because they've lost 3 of the last 4, and they are finding these ways to lose games, like historic ways to lose games, where every time they lose, there's one of those tweets, right? Where like teams are 87-1 in this specific scenario, and the one is Houston. Like the Lions. The Lions, Jared Goff with his 5 interceptions, they still won that game. 4?
It was 5, but 4 because of the Hail Mary.
Well, the Hail Mary, but there's also, the other one was off the hands of his receiver, et cetera.
I'm talking about the possession changes. There were 4 real possession changes.
Whatever. Point is, they lost the game where the opposing quarterback had 5 interceptions, and other things happen. Like they are finding these ways of losing weird games where they could or should be winning.
Anything else on this one? There was a lot to talk about in Texans-Titans here.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. We were talking Bryce Young. Let's talk about that game. Chiefs 30, Panthers 27. Chiefs move to 10-1. Panthers fall to 3-8. Steelers get the walk-off field goal in a game where, the Panthers hung tough. Early on, it looked like the Chiefs were going to dominate, as they should have been, as double-digit favorites against the 3-win Panthers. Mahomes with one of, he was kind of unstoppable. The offense was unstoppable in the first half. Panthers fought back, though, and again, I think Bryce Young is playing outstanding football and doing it against a very good Chiefs defense, which over the last couple weeks maybe has not been as dominant. And so Chiefs get the win, but, in less dominant fashion as you expected.
Yeah, I felt sorry for Carolina because they really hung tough in this game, both sides of the ball. Like Bryce Young had a really good game, which when you consider the scaling up of the difficulty assignment, I think is a really encouraging thing for him. This was good in absolute terms, not in relative terms to expectations, which has been like the last few weeks, like, Bryce Young's looked better. He's looked better. He still hasn't looked good necessarily. This game, he looked good. Genuinely was impressive. He had, on first run with PFF, he's got 5 big-time throws in this game. Again, one of them not complete. One of them was a dime to Xavier Legette, however we're terming that these days. Again, isn't able to come up with it down the sideline, but dropped it into a bucket. This looked like Alabama Bryce Young, where he's cool on the move, he's poised, he's dropping these passes in there where the arm strength is not an issue because he's able to get it where he needs to get it. This was really impressive. And the defense showed up as well. Like, they were sacking Mahomes. That doesn't tend to happen. This is like the highest sack rate Mahomes had in a game for a long time. They got home, and then right at the death, Bryce Young brings him down, gets the tying score.
And the 2-point conversion.
And the 2 points. Only there's some time on the clock, so Mahomes gets to go to work. And then right when he needs it, Mahomes just takes off, scrambles, makes a big play. It's like, God damn it. So really unfortunate because Carolina, their performance deserved to be sort of given the accolade of knocking off Kansas City and like being rewarded for it. In the end, you just have to take the kind of moral victory of saying, well, Bryce Young did have a really good game. We did show up against one of the better teams in the league, and can we feel good about that even though we got an L?
Yeah, for the third straight game, cannot say enough nice things about Bryce Young. And I want to say, I think it's the first couple of games was against lesser teams, and it was just coming out of low expectations, right? It's like the expectations were so low for Bryce Young, but
it was signs of life rather than anything else.
Yes, but in this one with Kansas City, I mean, Spags did his overload blitz on third down, and Bryce Young's like, nope, anticipation, pinpoint accurate. I'm going to convert this thing. That has not happened. That has not happened a lot over the last 2 or 3 years against the Chiefs. It just looks and feels different. This is what we said the first couple of weeks when he was only putting up 145 passing yards and the, like I said, pedestrian stat lines. It looks and feels different, and he's doing it with David Moore, catching six balls for 62 yards, and 6 for 81, hitting him over the middle, throwing anticipation passes over the middle, doing the Alabama type of stuff, Alabama type of feel, Alabama type of pocket movement. It's all not perfect, but it's so much better than it was. And I'll say it's enough. It's enough that if you told me 4 weeks ago, hey, the Panthers absolutely, they should be scouting every single quarterback, and they're absolutely taking a quarterback with their top 10 pick, I think it's enough these last few weeks that Bryce Young puts himself back on the radar as potential Panthers quarterback for 2025. I
mean, if this happened in week 11 or 12 last year, we would be saying, wow, Bryce Young just turned a corner. Bryce, like, he's arrived, right? Look at this. This is the number 1 overall pick playing against one of the best defenses in the NFL, putting up 5 big-time throws, looking cool, calm, and collected in the pocket, and working without a stellar, receiving core, et cetera, et cetera. Like, we'd be so impressed. It's only because you've seen an absolute season of disaster and then him getting benched already that you're like, maybe. But this was genuinely impressive by Bryce Young. Like, I don't want to belabor the point too much because, I think we've probably given him quite a lot of praise over the last few weeks where it has been relative to expectations. But this was legit. Bryce Young was very good in this game. On 3rd and 4th down, he was 8 of 12 for 116 yards. 9.7 yards per attempt. Like, he was good in adverse situations. He was good in good situations. Good across the board. And I think, again, the Panthers defense did its part as well. This is not a good defense, and yet they played well.
They did. Look, I thought the Panthers started slow with that. I mean, the pockets were massive for Mahomes, and I'm thinking, okay, this is one of the biggest mismatches in the NFL. We had been trashing the Panthers pass rush this entire season. They came into the game with, 12 sacks? And that's not even telling the entire story. They don't even get close to the quarterback more often than not. But DJ Wanham had some great rushes, Jadeveon Clowney. It was by far Carolina's best game rushing the passer, and that is a big part of what kept them in it. Like, look, Kansas City, the Panthers also, like the beginning of the second half, they went 15 plays for 75 yards. Every week we talk about keeping the ball out of Mahomes' hands. That's one of those drives that did it. They didn't. It took up the half of the third quarter. So Kansas City did not have a ton of possessions. They only punted twice, but those were some key stops in the fourth quarter to give Carolina opportunities to make the play, to make the comeback essentially. So Panthers defense absolutely deserves a lot of credit for kind of turning a corner. Like, they didn't make many stops early on. Couple in the red zone, got Mahomes on the ground 5 times. One of them was he was giving it up, just trying to keep the clock running late in the game, but that was unexpected. from me.
Yeah.
This Panthers pass rush actually doing some damage. And look, the Panthers are far more competitive now than they were when Bryce Young was the QB the first couple weeks of the season. So I think that's at least a good sign for Dave Canales as a first-year head coach, getting them moving in the right direction here, having this game against Kansas City.
Dave Canales, I think, has done a really good job basically since Bryce Young came back into the lineup. I think one of the elements of his early season struggle, and he was broken at that point, but he wasn't being helped out by the scheme either. Like this idea of the offseason, they upgraded the offensive line, the receiving core, and the coaching staff and scheme. And Canales has got a history of fixing these quarterbacks that had struggled. The first couple of weeks, like the offense was not doing an awful lot that played to Bryce Young's strengths or minimized where he was really struggling. Since he came back, like literally the first game he came back, they were clearly doing different things that helped him out. They were moving the pocket. They weren't just leaving him in this, collapsing pocket that he can't see over. They were getting him on the move. They were shifting the pockets. They were doing things that helped Bryce Young out. I think Canales has really helped and sort of gotten in sync with Bryce Young and is a big part of this improvement now. The one thing that the defense did, they blitzed Mahomes. Mahomes is in that category of you don't blitz him. He carves it up. It's a bad idea, right? You blitz him, big plays, don't do it. They were like, what the hell? We might as well. We're going to go down anyway. We might as well go down swinging. They dialed up blitzes, and they did it. They timed it well. They got to him. And Mahomes in this game was only 5 of 10 against the blitz for 5.5 yards per attempt. That's a bad output for what you generally see from Mahomes. By contrast, against the blitz, Bryce Young was 11 of 14 for 140 yards and a touchdown, which is 10 yards per attempt.
Which is usually Spag's game, man.
Right. So the Bryce Young actually dominated against the blitz, and Mahomes, the guy that usually is absolutely scintillating against the blitz, did not. And that was a big part of this. Where Mahomes did show up, though, and this is, again, the man is inevitable, 3rd and 4th down. Hasn't played particularly well in the game, but 3rd and 4th down is where he absolutely just decided, I'm going to make those plays. 3rd and 4th down in the game, Mahomes was 4 for 4 passing, including 2 touchdowns, 15.5 yards per attempt. And then on the run as well, he had another 2 scrambles for first downs, including vital plays. So 6 first downs essentially on those 3rd and 4th down plays. You need to get him off the field on those. Otherwise.
Noah Gray with the 35-yard touchdown on the very first drive. Noah Gray's made a lot of plays last few weeks here as the other tight end to Travis Kelce. He finds the end zone twice. DeAndre Hopkins with another touchdown there. But yeah, Mahomes with the 33-yard. I mean, as soon as the Panthers were just excited to be in it, I'm sure, right? With other teams, like when the Bills are
just happy to be here.
I'm just saying, when the Bills are trying to, if that was the Bills, we'd be saying, don't leave too much time. We'd be playing this game theory thing. With the Panthers, it's all right, score the touchdown, you get the 2-point conversion to tie it up, and then it's by the way, Mahomes and the Chiefs have a $145 or whatever it was left. It's they're probably going to get into field goal range.
But Mahomes is just inevitable is the word that keeps coming up. The plays that he's making I don't know if this is repeatable or if, it is repeatable. He's been doing it repeatedly. I don't know if it's a product of variance or if he is just genuinely, whatever the clutch gene is, he has it distilled to such a ridiculous degree that he can basically take most of a game off, but then be it's 3rd down now, I'm going to show up here. But his touchdown to Nuke Hopkins was ridiculous. The pocket's collapsing again. He just starts weaving around, bouncing, and then look, Hopkins is open. Fires it in this ridiculous arm angle, the wrong direction, right to him, touchdown. Again, late in the game, the Panthers have made the plays. Bryce Young has tied the game up. You're in trouble. It's I'm just going to take off, scamper, take most of this yardage that I need right now, individually. I'm going to do it. It was the run he had earlier in the season where he took off and a guy didn't take him out at the sideline. He just scampered up the sideline.
The key scrambles at the right time.
And again, another guy just kind of eased up a little bit and didn't run hard and take him out.
It's funny because if you were really critiquing Mahomes, you could say he may, and he's had the ankle injury this year. Has he lost half a step this year in some of his pocket mobility? Because he's gone down to the ground maybe a few more times than he has in the past, but he's still been able to break out these 30-yard runs in crunch time as really high, massive high variance swings at the game. So he still has it, but you could say, maybe he's not as good at avoiding some of the sacks, and you kind of saw that in this game with the Panthers, but still has it when they need it. The one other piece of that scramble, they got into field goal range. Schrader's their undrafted, pickup kicker because Harrison Butker's injured. Harrison Butker can kick those 50-plus yarders, so you have a different standard.
Right.
That you have confidence in Butker at 50-plus. You don't have to go that far for the game-winning field goal. They got into field goal range for a 31-yarder for Schrader for the walk-off field goal. That was important, too, for the offense to make sure that they made it an easier field goal as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they took care of that. So Chiefs take care of business, and now with Gardner Minshew injured, they were staring down the barrel of a Black Friday game against the lowly Raiders with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. So Chiefs moved to 10-1, looking at 11-1 most likely coming up on Friday. All right, let's go Detroit Lions with the win over the Indianapolis Colts, 24-6. The final here. Lions take care of business once again on the road, moving to 10-1. Colts fall to 5-7.
Colts gave it a good show, though. They gave it an effort.
They did. Another one, Anthony Richardson had that great game last week. Stat line was not great in this one, 11 of 28 for 172, but another one where he put some of his best throws fell incomplete.
Should have had a touchdown.
Yep, absolutely. And he had 61 yards on the ground, but the Lions have multiple ways to win, even if they're not lighting things up through the air. The run game was excellent. I got some stats on that in a minute here, but feels like the Colts had some opportunities here to make it a little bit closer.
Yeah, certainly early in the game as well. Who was it? Ogletree dropped what should have been a touchdown for them. They end up having to settle for a field goal, so that's it's one of those 4-point mistake plays for them.
Richardson, he had like a 35, 40-yard dime to Ashton Doolin too.
Yeah,
that he didn't stay in bounds. Like there are a couple of the really nice throws from Richardson that ended up falling incomplete.
One of the things I'm not certain of at the moment, I don't know if they have a ton of sort of read option type looks with him and Jonathan Taylor, which makes sense, right? I don't know how many of those, I don't know if they're actual read options or if they're just read option mechanics while the play is for Anthony Richardson to carry the ball. You know what I mean? But it feels like they need to give Taylor more of those handoffs. And maybe, there's a couple of options. Are they actually read option plays or are they simply called runs for Richardson that have read option looks? Or are they actually read options and Richardson is pulling the ball more than he should be at the moment? Either way, I think they need to start giving the ball to Jonathan Taylor more on those plays because there's some open looks that they're instead keeping with Richardson and they're getting buried a bit more than they should. Like Jonathan Taylor is a top-tier running back. Give him the handoff on where it's open.
Yeah, theoretically that run game should be more effective with both of those guys in the backfield.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what that.
And I think the reason it isn't is because you see a lot of these plays where he's pulling the ball and it's not the right option. Now, if it's not an option, that makes sense because, it's not an option. It's his call. But if it is an option, you're making the wrong call there. Like, give it because the guy on the edge is not biting.
The other thing I wanted to highlight too, Richardson. Pretty effective on early downs, passing grade, PFF passing grade in the 70s. On fourth down was 48. Third and fourth down, sorry. Mostly on those third downs. Lions did a really nice job on third down, cracking down. That's why it felt like the Colts had some opportunities, but the Lions defense did a really nice job cracking down. They had Zadarius Smith.
Another good game.
Yep, getting after it. And if you go back and just watch his pressures, it's kind of like what we talked about when they picked him up. He's not a direct Aiden Hutchinson replacement. He's a move all over the place replacement, and Aaron Glenn's using him in that way, which is a good sign, I think, for the Lions that you now have a weapon, movable pass rusher like Zadarius Smith.
He's a really important pickup for them. Like, it's not a direct replacement for Aiden Hutchinson, but it is a guy that can offset at least a decent degree of the pressure you lose by not having Aiden Hutchinson there. So in this game, you had a significant presence from Zadarius Smith along with a significant presence from Alim McNeil, and that's enough, right? Against, a pretty good team. So that's important. Like, without, you take him out of the lineup and suddenly Alim McNeil is leading the line as the only significant source of pass rush, and now it's like, it's probably a closer game. I think Zadarius Smith is a really important pickup for this Detroit team who just gives them enough from a pass rushing standpoint. And then, maybe they could get Aiden Hutchinson back, get deep into the playoffs.
I know they initially said Super Bowl only
for
Hutch. So, I mean, that 2-week buffer, I guess, seems pretty important. I would love to see what that pass rush looks like, because Alim McNeil was outstanding as well.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of interior pass rush from the Lions because of where Zadarius Smith was lined up. Would love to see what that looks like with Hutch coming off the edge.
Yeah.
The other thing, so I had some people tweeting at me about the Lions' disrespectful runs. Remember, I made up this stat a few weeks ago? The disrespectful run. Just trying to be like Kyle Brandt here with angry runs.
Oh, yeah.
Lions will start handing out scepters for disrespectful runs here.
Okay.
So the disrespectful run that the Lions have mastered, we call it 3rd or 4th down and 3 to 8 yards to go. I may have made the cutoff at 3 to 7. We'll call it 3 to 8 because there was a 3rd and 8 in this one.
Right.
3 to 8 yards to go. And the draw play is banned from a disrespectful run. You can't run the draw because there's deception in there.
Right.
Right? The disrespect part is we're going to run a normal run concept. We're not going to make you think it's pass. We're just going to run right at you.
Yeah.
The Lions had 3 of these
Yeah.
that converted. 3rd and 8. Like 3rd and 8. We see these play cards that every coordinator has. You know what's not on everyone's 3rd and 8 play call?
Power.
Yeah. Duo.
Yeah.
Inside zone. But not Ben Johnson. They run duo. Duo's a 1st and 10, like, oh, well, let's get 3.
Yeah.
Let's just keep, stay ahead of the sticks here. 1st and 10, run duo. They run duo on 3rd and 8, and Jahmyr Gibbs picks up 17. Just moving people off the line, Gibbs picks up 17. They go 3rd and 6, shotgun, inside zone, David Montgomery for 13, and then 3rd and goal from the 5. From the 5! Of course it's a pass play. Nope. Inside zone to Jahmyr Gibbs. He bounces it outside for a 5-yard touchdown run. 3 disrespectful runs by the Lions, all converted, 1 for a touchdown. Awesome job by Gibbs, Montgomery, and that entire offensive line at the point of attack.
The Lions and the Eagles, I think, are the 2 teams who embody this idea of just keep leaning on them. Just keep leaning on them up front. At some point, we'll establish our will and dominate the trenches, and we're going to run the ball when they can't stop it and just grind them down. And they've been really good at that. The other thing that was interesting, though, remember we've been sort of talking about, like, if they win a game where Jared Goff throws 5 interceptions, like, how do you actually beat this team? What needs to happen for the Lions to lose a game, right? One thing that occurred, they had a 4th and 1 play, or I think it was 4th and 1, but they had a 4th down where they went for it and they didn't get it.
Zaire Franklin.
Yeah, really good play. It did occur to me that because of how aggressive they are with this stuff, they're going to give you a lot of high leverage plays that if you can show up on those plays alone, you can go a long way to chopping into the win percentage.
That's it.
The graph that shows win percentage for a team, it's going to start off with the Lions at like 75%, right? But they're going to give you a lot of huge swing plays that if you can just show up on those plays, you can really start chopping into that win percentage and swing it in your direction. Now, the Colts did it in one play here, and it didn't matter. But if you get 3 or 4 of those in a game, and you get all of them, it's obviously not easy for that to happen. The Lions are really good. But they're going to give you those high leverage shots that other teams won't.
That reminds me of the 2019 Ravens. That was Lamar's first MVP season. They were the best team in the NFL by far. The NFL had started to be more aggressive on 4th down. The Ravens were at the forefront of it. And going into the playoffs, they had the bye. They're playing the Titans. And what were they, like 12 for 15 on 4th downs? I mean, teams didn't go for it as much back then, but the Ravens were so good at it. And then you looked at Lamar Jackson, the runner, their offensive line, all the weapons that they had. It's like, well, how do you stop this team on 4th down? And in that particular game, the Titans stopped them on their first 2 4th downs. And it's like, well, variance caught up to the Ravens, and the Titans pulled the upset.
Right.
So, yes, if you're going to upset the Lions, you have to make some of those highlights.
And to be clear, I think the Lions are doing the right thing in doing that. I think the aggressiveness is maximizing their chance of winning those games, but it does mean that they are unusually susceptible to these massive swings in outcome if they just catch a crappy end of variance, in a specific game. Like, there are other teams that simply aren't going to give teams those opportunities to close win percentage gaps in such giant chunks. But in this game, it didn't matter. This was like a breakout game for all the rookie pass rushers. Chop Robinson absolutely dominated. Jared Verse was a beast against the Eagles, at least for stretches. Latu had a big game as well.
Yeah, he has a strip sack in there. I think the Lions recovered that, right? I mean, that's another one of those great play by the Colts.
Right.
If you're going to pull the upset, fumble luck, fumble bounces, which is what the Bucs had in week 1, by the way. I was back in week 2. I was trying to convey in week 2 when the Bucs beat the Lions, their only loss. I'm like, yeah, good win by the Bucs, but man, like Baker fumbled twice and they recovered it. Like the variance went the Bucs' way in that game against Detroit. Like if you're going to pull the upset, you're going to need stuff to bounce your way, and the Colts didn't have that. But Latu did have a really nice game in this one.
Yep.
Rushing the passer better than before. Lions just have so many different ways to win. I love their run game.
Yeah.
They spread the ball around. Jamison Williams has 64 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown has 62. Can't believe the league let the Lions have Tim Patrick with 55 yards on 4 catches as well. Montgomery coming out of the backfield with 36 yards. They just have so many ways to win.
Are we now setting up the optimal NFC Championship game now is Detroit, Philadelphia?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the team. They're the antidote, or they're the optimal dance partner, right? Like you look at Detroit and you're like, I really want to see Philadelphia take on this team. And then you look at Philadelphia and you're like, what happens when they run into Detroit? Like,
yes.
Given how good they are. It's the two Titans. They're the teams I want to see go up against each other.
In last year's NFC Championship, Lions-49ers was the right matchup as well.
Yeah.
Which
and
was
I know,
outstanding. It was a great game, obviously.
Minnesota's still winning. Green Bay obviously just stamped the 49ers. The 49ers, if they get everyone healthy, maybe. But like right now, the two Titans look to be Detroit, Philadelphia.
It does. Minnesota's going to have something to say about it. Green Bay is going to have something to say about it. Who knows if whoever comes out of the West just becomes like a difficult out in the playoffs. But, yeah, Lions and Eagles looking like the clear best teams in the NFC, I would say, right now. So, good job by the Lions taking care of business here. Speaking of the Vikings, another wild game. They get the win in overtime against the Chicago Bears. It was 30-27. Vikings move to 9-2. Bears fall to 4-7. Another game where you just have like a lot of high leverage plays to unpack here. But high level, Sam Darnold with some huge throws in this game, very aggressive, getting the ball down the field, big time throws left and right. And then from a Bears perspective, can you be optimistic as a Bears fan? Let's add some optimism here. Caleb Williams looking good. Again, not perfect, not, it's a sack that he doesn't want to take in overtime and a couple throws that he would want back. But, man, the natural playmaking of Caleb Williams, far more of it these last couple weeks than we saw earlier in the year.
Yeah, I mean, and I think in this game, like Caleb Williams was dragging everybody else to success. I mean, he was making a bunch of really tight window throws. He made a ton of plays in this game. And, he took a bad sack at a bad time late in the game, but he was also basically individually responsible for them even being there in the first place.
Sure.
So to an extent, you can be like, whatever. And again, level set, it was against the Flores defense, which is a general nightmare for quarterbacks. So given what happened last week and they didn't really get rewarded necessarily, this is the second week in a row where since they've made the change in coaching, Caleb Williams has looked like a different quarterback. And this, I mean, if we hadn't seen an uptick in his performance earlier in the season, this would be where you'd be like, this looks like USC Caleb Williams. He's making a bunch of plays. The sort of ridiculous pass he made down the sideline to DeAndre Swift, like that was crazy. That was USC Caleb Williams. That was the preseason Caleb Williams where he dropped one of those into Roma Dunze down the sideline.
Yeah.
Like get out of chaos, make a guy look ridiculous in the backfield, and then flick a pass right into the path of your receiver miles downfield that had no business getting there.
I didn't know if anyone with Mina, you still listen? Like anyone with the next gen stats access, like what his
completion probability?
No, I think Mina had pulled out these stats previously before where it would be like when QB's running, faster than 14 or 15 miles an hour, his completion percentage, because Williams was running fast. Like he was booking it to the sideline when he dropped that ball in to DeAndre Swift. That was really impressive. He also just had, like, I think the downfield accuracy from Caleb Williams this year has been very inconsistent.
Yeah.
But a seam route with velocity, the back shoulder to Keenan Allen where he just couldn't keep that second foot in was outstanding.
He made at least
multiple
three
seams, actually.
Ridiculously tight window throws to Keenan Allen.
Yes.
Like there was one drive where he was specifically ruining the life of Andrew Van Ginkel, where one of them, like Van Ginkel almost got his hand to that ball that zips through and hits Keenan Allen. The next one, he makes him look ridiculous in the backfield and gets around him. I think that was the the deep throw to DeAndre Swift. Like, he just one drive for some reason, Van Ginkel was just the victim of everything Caleb Williams did.
And then the last one was with 21 seconds left, down 3, and he hits the big dig route to set up the game-tying field goal to even get the game to overtime. That was outstanding as well from Caleb Williams. So a lot of big-time throws there. The Bears get the ball in overtime. Takes a bad sack on second down. I mean, he held the ball for about 7 or 8 seconds, right? In that one, that was a long. Vikings get the ball back, end up getting the game-winning field goal. So just wanted to highlight Williams. He had a big 4th and 4 run to convert. He did some really nice things in this game. On the other hand, Minnesota, man, Sam Darnold continues to improve. I thought they were very aggressive. His average depth of target was over 10. And at first run on PFF, I'm highlighting Caleb Williams' big-time throws. First run has 5. Darnold has 5 of his own, which was really – he was just really impressive in this game.
Yeah, Darnold looked really good again. And Jordan Addison was the sort of chief beneficiary of it. Later on, T.J. Hawkinson took over, but those two really went nuts. Justin Jefferson – not really a factor on the stat sheet, but I think you see Justin Jefferson's impact in the production from Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson. Like, the Bears were focusing so much on taking Jefferson out of the game, and you can see it if you go through their targets. Like, you can see specific plays where all the attention, all the coverage is going towards Jefferson, and that's giving not just Jordan Addison or TJ Hawkinson like a favorable matchup, but like basically a cheap win, like a non-real target. Like, there was a third down play, 3rd and long, where it's not a real coverage. Like, they've warped some version of cover 2, and Addison now has a free release with the right leverage against a safety. Like, that's just pitch and catch at that level because 2 guys are covering Justin Jefferson. So Jefferson's impact went beyond that. I will say, though, that Addison, for a guy who, like, the reason he slipped in the draft to where he did is he's one of those guys whose measurables in every possible way are bad, right? Small, slow, light, like every possible measure was like, yeah, that's a little worrying when it came up with the combine. He's so much stronger than his size. It's nuts. They had a deep post or whatever it was against Terrell Smith, who's like 210 pounds, and Addison was the guy boxing him out and winning physically at the catch point. And it's like, that's not supposed to happen. You look at these 2 guys on paper, if it's a jump ball deep down the field, this is the one that should be winning. And instead it's Addison. There's another play later on where he catches the ball and rides a hit from the safety and carries on running down the sideline. He's got a bunch of those plays on his tape where it's a run after the catch where he rides contact, and you think a guy of his size should be taken down by that. He's a lot stronger than that.
The catch on that deep post was, that was outstanding.
Yeah.
The catch point strength from him, the one in the end zone for the touchdown, outstanding. I'm watching this game and I'm thinking about GM Kwesi and what he's done over the last couple of years. Drafted Addison in the first round, traded for TJ Hawkinson, and we talk a lot about building a basketball team or just having so many playmakers and options. Aaron Jones out of the backfield. Justin Jefferson, I think he's the best receiver in the NFL, but in a game like this, only ends up with, was it 3 catches officially for him?
2.
Was it, or 2? Because I got the negated plays on
2
here.
for 27.
2 for 27. There was a negated catch in there as well. There was a long pass interference in there as well. But you can have Jordan Addison as the other option, picking up 8 catches for 162. Hawkinson, 7 for 114, and starting to make plays down the field, not just underneath. Being able to put, when he's isolated one-on-one, throw the ball up to him and have him make a play. Having Aaron Jones running the ball. By the way, Aaron Jones fumbling at the goal line early on, maybe keeping the Bears in the game longer.
The Vikings have some absurd record of like first drive turnovers. I forget what the number was. I think it was since the start of last season, but it was like they had 9 first drive turnovers or something, which leads the NFL. Like, the Vikings on that first drive just marched down the field. Aaron Jones is carving everybody up, and then they get to the goal line. To be fair, it was a really nice play from Jonathan Owens, who just ripped the ball from him. But yeah, fumble at the goal line where they should have gone up by 7 and like immediately put a stamp on the game, which, as good as Minnesota have been and as good as they've looked, they have this tendency to like, they're kind of their own worst enemy. They've been giving teams the opportunities to get back in these games when they should just be foot on the throat and stomping the life out of them quickly. And a lot of them have happened early in the game. But yeah, they should have marched down. Owens had an interesting game. Like, that play was amazing. He was also the guy that missed the tackle on Jordan Addison, where I was like, Addison did it really well to ride that contact. On the other hand, if he just went to tackle instead of hit, like, it was the poster child of, like, wrap your arms. If you hit a guy and he doesn't fall over, it's a big play. Like, drives me nuts as safeties doing that. What else did I? Oh, yeah. Kevin O'Connell deserves a lot of credit for just being an extremely good play caller, right? Nowhere was it better highlighted than Darnold gets hurt. He gets, like, someone falls on his ankle during a tackle. So Nick Mullins has to come in, and inconveniently, he has to come in on 3rd and 13. It's like, okay, we've got a not great backup quarterback coming in cold off the bench. The last thing you want him doing is, I need to pick up 13 yards here. Go. So they pull out this just great play where it's almost like a screen. It's one of those ones where it's like a drag from one side, but the entire left side of the formation is actually blocking. They're not even running routes, right? They're not options on this play. So you hit Jones over the middle for 5 yards or whatever, but he's running towards the left side where 3 guys are out there blocking to take out the rest of the defense. So 3rd and 13, you don't ask your quarterback to do much, just a simple pass over the middle, but the play is designed so that there's another 7 yards there, and he picks up 14 on 3rd and 13. Mullins goes off the field. Like, I needed him for one play, and I didn't ask him to do too much. I had this one sitting there somewhere just for this situation, and then boom.
And you know Nick wants to do too much. You know Nick, he's like Kellen Moore armed Jameis.
Yeah.
You know? Kellen Moore's arm, Jameis's aggressiveness, Jameis's mindset. Mullins made some incredible throws last year in relief and also some disastrous ones. But no, that was a good play. I mean, and Darnold, the injury looked bad for a minute. Happy that he made it back into the game.
They did, however, Minnesota lose Cam Robinson, their newly acquired left tackle, to
early,
a foot injury.
First quarter.
Yeah. And Ivan Pace Jr., the linebacker. So it was potentially costly for them. The Vikings, I don't think, have issued an update as to how long either of those guys are going to be out. But Robinson in particular, they traded for him because Darisaw goes down. They really need a viable left tackle.
David Quessenberry filling in. But yeah, if you're down to 3rd string left tackle,
that would be bad.
Not great. Just want to say again, just to put a bow on the Darnold discussion too. They were throwing the ball down the field. They have dudes to throw to. Going back to Kwesi's job building this team, I think they've built one of the best group of playmakers in the NFL. A game like this shows it, where you didn't have to feed Justin Jefferson. And even when you forced some passes to Justin Jefferson, you still have other guys to make plays. Defensively, the Jonathan Grenards, the Van Ginkels, the Stephon Gilmores of the world. Really an impressive team-building effort, I think, that we're starting to see come to fruition here for Minnesota. And I think we were both lower on Minnesota, certainly than a 9-2 team, because you didn't know what you're going to get at the quarterback position. So then you add the Darnold component to it. And Darnold, I think every time it's the Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield thing for me, right? You've got these priors, and so it's like, prove that the priors are wrong. Prove that when another team thought that you were not capable of being a starting quarterback, prove now that you can be. And part of that's not just playing pristine the whole way, it's bouncing back from adversity. And we said earlier in the year, there were some games where Darnold didn't play throw for throw great. Then there's the Jags game where he literally almost blew the game for Minnesota. And since that point, though, was outstanding last week against Tennessee, was outstanding in this game against the Bears. And I think that's a huge sign that Darnold can improve, bounce back from adversity, and that it's not like growth isn't always linear. We like to say that a lot. But the fact that Darnold hasn't fallen off a cliff, I think, is massive. And the fact that he's actually maybe upped his game these last 2 weeks after the disappointing game with the 3 red zone interceptions against Jacksonville, also huge, I think, for Minnesota. Look, I don't know if they're going to the Super Bowl, but right. I think they're going to be a competitive, tough out when it comes to playoff time.
And he's done it in, pressure situations as well. Like, this was a game where the Vikings, going into overtime, the Vikings could easily have felt like this had already slipped away from them, right? Like, they'd blown a big lead. the Bears had taken them to overtime in a game they should have lost already, and now you're out there having to try and win the game again effectively from the quarterback situation. Like, it would have been easy, and he took a sack in overtime. Like he did the Caleb Williams thing. It wasn't quite as bad, but he took a bad sack as well and backed them up. It would have been easy at that point to kind of melt down and, go full Sam Darnold mistake time. But instead, he was like, no, just make the plays again. Big conversion to Addison, plays to Hawkinson. Like, he played really well when the game was on the line. A couple of Bears, though, I wanted to shout out. Kyler Gordon was making some really impressive plays for them. He had a really nice pass breakup on fourth down. He did, yeah. Really nice play on a screen where they got guys out in front of him. He got around TJ Hawkinson, I think, to stuff it out. He had a really good play. DJ Moore is so good at the quick screen, run after the catch stuff, the designed run after the catch plays for wide receivers. He is so good. I think it was a touchdown in this game where he caught the ball. There's players all over the place, and yet immediately you took a look at it like, he's scoring on this. Like, he's going to find that lane to get through there and actually get it into the end zone. So those two guys, I thought, had really good games.
Yeah, good shout on all that. So Minnesota 9-2, Bears 4-7, disappointing, but still some optimism with the way Caleb Williams played.
Yeah, they haven't been rewarded for it because they've faced two good teams, and one of them both of them have blocked kicks. But it's definitely been a notable improvement since they made the change at offensive coordinator. Caleb Williams has looked dramatically better. And at this point for Chicago, since the season is effectively gone, that's the goal, right? It's like, let's make sure Caleb Williams is good and everything's moving in the right direction there.
Yeah, offense does look much better the last couple of weeks, I will say.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the 4 o'clock games. Green Bay Packers 38, Niners 10. Packers move to 8-3. Niners fall to 5-6. When we recorded our Thursday preview show, we did not know that Brock Purdy would have a shoulder injury. The Niners supposedly, they knew he had a shoulder. He was on the injury report. He goes out. They expect him to practice on Thursday and to throw, and they're like, oh, it's way worse than we anticipated. And very quickly ruled him out. And with Brandon Allen getting the start, it's an interesting, slight contradiction here. Like, they ruled him out very quickly for this game, but they're like, don't worry, 7 days later, he'll be perfectly fine for the Buffalo game.
Yeah.
So that's where we are right now. Brandon Allen got the start for the Niners. And, credit the Packers. I think they leaned on the Niners early. Every time San Francisco showed some life and George Kittle made a big play, Packers always came back, had answers, and just looked like the better team in this one it was a depleted Niners team, though.
Yeah, between that and the Christian McCaffrey injury development, I'm starting to lose trust in what the 49ers say from an injury perspective, at least in terms of projecting how far injuries are going to linger, So I don't know if we're going to see Brock Purdy next week, however optimistic they are about it. Yeah, so obviously without Brock Purdy there, it's a different prospect from the 49ers, but the big problem was, Nick Bosa not being in, and again, that was kind of up in the air when we recorded our preview. We're like, this is a different defense without Nick Bosa there. Javon Hargrave's already missing. You take Bosa out of the lineup as well. Now you've got a bad defensive line as opposed to one that's pretty good based off star players. And Green Bay just stomped them. I mean, the opening drive, right?
A line that couldn't tackle, apparently. Whoever was left can't tackle.
Yeah. The opening drive, Green Bay chewed up like most of the first quarter with it. They got a 12-play, 67-yard drive that took up literally half the quarter, 7.5 minutes for them. The run defense for the 49ers is just getting gashed. Green Bay had 169 yards, I think, total. Josh Jacobs, at one point, NGS had him with 14 broken tackles by the end of the third quarter. PFF right now has him with 12.
12, yeah.
Either way, those are monster numbers. The 49ers just could not stop Josh Jacobs. And
3 more for Emmanuel Wilson.
Yeah, and he, missed some time in the game. Went in to get an IV or something, was cramping. So Emmanuel Wilson had some carries. But they couldn't stop the run game. And at that point, it's like, okay, you can't stop Green Bay scoring because you can't stop them running. You're not asking a lot of Jordan Love because the run game is so powerful. Now you're going to need Brandon Allen to match them, and he just couldn't.
No, I mean, Allen did some nice things at points when it's like, all right, I see Shanahan and the scheme and the playmakers, and they're able to do some stuff, but It just wasn't enough, man.
No.
Packers have a lot of different ways to win as well. I mean, that's what I like to highlight as far as good teams go. Josh Jacobs was outstanding. And look, interesting offseason developments because Aaron Jones is a really good running back. And how many times when he got going did the Packers offense coincide with that, right? Get going. And the fact that Aaron Jones goes to Minnesota and Josh Jacobs, who was he was an impact player for the Raiders just 2 years ago. And he comes to Green Bay and it's kind of ends up being a lateral move, I would say, for the Packers. It's not like a knock on Aaron Jones but like Jacobs in this game and other games this year, tough to tackle, can win on the ground, have all those various playmakers to get the ball to, Tucker Kraft as a tight end, and Jacobs was just so tough to take down in this game, and he ends up with 3 touchdowns. And the Packers, like you said, Jordan Love didn't have to do a ton, and that might be the most impressive thing about this Packers win is each week we don't know who it's going to be. Like we talked about Christian Watson with the big plays a couple weeks ago or last week against Chicago to win the game.
Not this week.
Not this week. Jordan Love's best throw gets dropped by Christian Watson, but they just have so many different ways to attack you offensively, and Matt LaFleur still one of the better play callers in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean they had this game like well in hand. I mean, honestly, San Francisco made it a fight for a brief period, but like the first half was all Green Bay. And then the 49ers did get that touchdown drive just before halftime. Christian Watson drops that touchdown before half. You're like, okay, maybe signs of life. Where I think it really got snuffed out for San Francisco, coming out of halftime, they have Deebo Samuel back as a kick returner, one of their best playmakers. He breaks off a huge opening kick return, and they bring it back for what I think is basically a bullshit holding call. They negated the kick return. They end up not getting anything. Green Bay holds on 4th down in that series, so they get good field position out of it as well. That ends up being a huge call.
If you combine that with what happened before the half, which was the Christian Watson drop. So the Packers had under a minute, I believe it was.
Right. So there's that little sequence where San Francisco just gets their touchdown. Green Bay has a chance to answer, drops the touchdown, and then coming out of halftime.
It wasn't a touchdown, but it would have put him into field goal range, right?
It was deep.
It was a deep ball. I would have put him
very close.
Deep into Niners territory.
Anyway, San Francisco scores. Green Bay doesn't score. And then coming out of halftime, they had a chance to set themselves up basically in the red zone. That could have been a massive sequence of swings, all in San Francisco's favor. Instead, the touchdown or the big return gets taken off the board. I think.
Oh, yeah, that's probably a touchdown. Sorry.
Yeah.
You're right.
I think defenders / special teams players, I think people have learned how to draw that holding flag. It's like the guy's engaged, you're getting blocked, the ball carrier is going past you.
Wow.
So what you do is you put one arm out, right? And then you fall backwards.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's a holding call. He's being held. It's like, he isn't. Look at what he's doing.
You gotta push aside a little bit of pride and get pancaked.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
I'm losing leverage. I can't. He's holding me.
If I ostentatiously get pancaked with one arm out in this direction, it looks like I'm trying to disengage from the block and they'll give me a holding call. But if you watch what that guy does, I forget who the guy was that was actually making the block. It's a great block. He's got his hands are inside, right? As soon as the defender starts to put this arm out and try and disengage, he lets go of that arm. Like, he doesn't hold him. And then the other arm, he simply drives him into the turf. It's a textbook pancake block. The guy has essentially flopped and looked for the holding call, and he's been given it. And that snuffed out all life from the 49ers.
Yeah, and just, again, from like from an underdog perspective, when your Niners are down 17-7, Packers give this opportunity, because the Packers should have been up 7 at the half, like you said. Christian Watson with the drop. You miss out on that big play coming out of the half. Stopped on 4th down. Ball goes through Deebo Samuel's hands on another one that gets picked off by Xavier McKinney again, the free agent safety from the Packers, coming good. Some missed opportunities, and like if the Niners were ever going to have a chance to come back in this game, they needed a lot of those things to fall. But man, the Packers leaned on him again in the second half and kind of ran away with it.
Yeah, like Green Bay, the only thing that gave San Francisco life in the second half after that penalty that took away the kick return is that Green Bay's offense stopped scoring. Like, they did sort of stall for the second half and give them an opportunity to get back into it. But then every time there was life, they just snuffed it out. Like they forced a fumble. Lucas Van Ness made a nice play to force a fumble. Christian McCaffrey fumbles, right at the end to sort of really snuff it out. But the defense stood up when the offense stalled for Green Bay.
Well, Sam, on Wednesday's show, we did a fun episode where we decided we were going to put our top 5 Super Bowl contenders into a list. And you said, I'm going to put the Niners 5, but
Correct.
Oh, shoot, this might not be a good week.
Yeah, and that was before we knew Brock Purdy wasn't going to play.
To do that, yes. Is it all falling apart here for San Francisco? They're 5-6. They go to Buffalo for Sunday Night Football next week. Still have the Lions on the schedule later. They go to Miami. Some tough games, couple division games. It's not easy.
It's a horrible schedule.
Brock Purdy's hurt, and a bunch of their other stars banged up as well.
Yeah.
And by the way, Christian McCaffrey, after his early season injury, not looking the same either.
It's a horrible schedule. I mean, they go on the road to Buffalo. Then they've got the 2 easiest games are Chicago and the Rams at home. And then they go on the road to Miami, home against Detroit, and on the road against Arizona. They could lose any of those games. I mean, all of them are losable based off what they've shown so far this season. On the other hand, I do think if people get healthy, like Purdy needs to be healthy, I think if you put Purdy on that lineup, I think they are still capable of beating any team in the NFL, right? Like I think that's why
Agreed.
They are theoretical Super Bowl contenders still. They are now in a real hole, and they have they're probably as likely to miss the playoffs as they are to make the playoffs. But if they are able to win enough of those games and get themselves back into a spot where they sneak in, they're live threats. That's why I think they're still a Super Bowl contender. But losing Purdy couldn't have happened at a worse time because they already were in a hole, like 500 deep into the season. You can't really afford to lose too many of those games, particularly with that schedule upcoming, to then lose your quarterback. There goes another one. Now we're under 500. There's just no margin for error, and you don't have the benefit of an easy schedule to help you out.
The other piece that we highlighted last night, we talked about Daniel Jones as potentially moving around. The Niners, now if Brock Purdy's injury is more serious, do they try to pick up Daniel Jones? I mean, multiple teams are going to be in the Daniel Jones sweepstakes here.
The sweepstakes.
Sam. The sweepstakes for potentially the top backup in the NFL, one of the top backups in the NFL right now. The Ravens. Are the Niners involved here?
He's interested apparently in a contender. Like he's focusing on ring chasing. So people are like,
he wants to just tail the Ravens on their way to a Super Bowl.
Well,
or
think about it from his point of view. He's already getting paid by the Giants, right? Why would you go and start for the Raiders in the midst of this collapse late in the season when everyone's getting fired?
No, but
like
the Niners, if they.
Right.
He could go save the Niners.
No, agreed.
With Kyle.
I mean, that is a much more attractive. But like people were saying, he's going to go. Like Minshew got hurt, he's going for the Raiders. Like why would Daniel Jones go to start for the Raiders for the rest of the season when the alternative could be I'm going to go back up Lamar Jackson and have a real shot at coming away with a championship at the end of this. A championship I had nothing to do with, but still, I get a ring. I don't have to get my ass kicked for the Raiders. All's good. I'm still getting paid either way.
They want to go play.
The 49ers is more compelling, where you would start for a bit and theoretically help them get to the playoffs and
they
chase
said
a ring.
Brock Purdy's coming back Sunday night against Buffalo, so we shall
Maybe
see.
he has as much confidence in their medical reporting as the rest of us do now.
Anything else on this game or Green Bay?
Green Bay, very impressive again. Like they were impressive on both sides of the ball. This was a good matchup for them given the deficiencies that the 49ers had, but they took care of it, and they're in that brutal division, the NFC North, where all the top 3 teams are all winning and don't show any signs of losing them necessarily. They're keeping pace.
I'm now looking forward to Thursday night, Thanksgiving night against the Dolphins even more.
Fun game.
In Green Bay, hopefully it's freezing. I haven't checked the weather yet, but
it's got a higher chance.
It's got to be cold, right? Go check it. The Dolphins on the road with weather, always fun. All right, a few more games, but got to tell you about our friends over at PrizePicks. The whole show brought to you by PrizePicks, the very best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. We've been playing all season. More success more often than not the last couple weeks, but we've been putting out our 3-player lineup, most of the time 3-player lineups. We'll be doing that again on Wednesday's show, but you just pick players and stats, projections, you pick more or less, It's very easy. PrizePicks has also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And PrizePicks is the only real money fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. So your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. And PrizePicks also puts its members first, Sam. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money in as quickly as 15 minutes. So you can download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, PrizePicks app, promo code is CheckTheMic. $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Did you find the weather?
It's going to be cold.
Nice. Now I'll tune in.
40 or something in the day and 20 something at night. So
20s. Miami in the 20s. Pull out the Tua sub 30 degree temperature stats.
I don't know when the crossover period gets there night wise, but it's getting colder.
Seattle Seahawks 16, Arizona Cardinals 6. Seattle is now in first place in the NFC West. You know, one of those games where like this game has 15 lead changes.
Yeah,
that's the NFC West. They're going to have 15 lead changes as far as the leaders in the NFC West. The Seahawks have now overtaken the Arizona Cardinals. Wasn't it the Niners just a couple weeks ago?
Everyone's within a game of each other.
Everyone's still within a game. So Seattle and Arizona both 6-5.
I mean, they take over.
The Niners
first.
are 5-6, and the Rams are 5-6.
Right. They take over first with the tiebreaker. Like they're
with the tiebreaker, right?
They have the same record. So Seattle 6-5, Arizona 6-5, and the other two 5-6.
Really a strong performance by Seattle. Not a lot of offense on either side though, because there was a pick six by Kobe Bryant from Seattle to go up 13-3. Geno Smith with an red zone interception, another red zone interception in there to kind of help keep Arizona in it. But Seattle's defense, I mean, both defenses played really well. Arizona continues to play above their skis, I would say, defensively. But Seattle, to me, the big story is their run defense, which has been pretty bad this season, reshaping their linebacker core these last few weeks. We've highlighted that on the preview show. Really came good against an Arizona team that was moving the ball very effectively on the ground coming into this game.
Yeah, their defense did a really good job. That's the other reason, by the way, that the Rams or the 49ers are in a hole, is because they're the only team in that division that have a crappy record within the division.
Yeah.
They have part of their problem of timing bad losses is they've been division losses as well. So tough schedule, no quarterback, under 500, and you're behind the eight ball in the division where it's tight.
But you're just a game back. And even if you
That's
say,
the only
hey,
thing
it's
that's
2
good.
games back because we've
Right.
lost some division games, it's a 5-6 team that's very much in it.
Yes, with division games to come.
Because Seattle, things looked bleak for Seattle a couple weeks ago. Now
Right.
they're in first.
Yeah, I mean, they could win against Arizona and Los Angeles on the schedule. You're back to 500 within the division, and that's 2 of the wins you're going to need in order to get back ahead of 500. So it's not dead and buried, but they're in a hole. But yeah, Seattle, their defense did such a good job against Arizona, an offense that had been really cooking. Like, they bottled up Kyler Murray. They didn't let him make too many of those freakish plays. They had a couple plays where they got him on the run. When Kyler Murray's been on the run this season, it's been generally good. They didn't give him many places to go. They stuffed what he wanted to do, forced him to try and beat people with his legs, and did a good job of stopping him doing that as well.
Yeah, I thought I went back to rewatch some of Seattle's defensive front just to see, because early in the season, I don't know what was completely wrong, but they got rid of Tyrell Dodson. Like, they moved some pieces around, brought in Ernest Jones. The team was raving about Ernest Jones. Tyrese Knight, the mid-round draft pick, who was a good run stopper in college. Both of those guys played pretty well in this game. Defensive front played much better, so I think that was a huge key. That pick six, did you see the people highlighting Devin Witherspoon's play?
Yeah.
On the pick six?
Mm-hmm.
That was really good, man. That was outstanding. Devin Witherspoon remains one of just the fun players to watch. He had a tackle for loss in the run game. On the pick six, Kyler's rolling out. Devin Witherspoon peels off and just cuts him off. Kyler makes a bad decision and kind of chucks it up. Kobe Bryant picks it off, takes it to the house. That's such a huge play in this game.
Well, he'd put himself, like, Witherspoon was basically playing run the whole way, and then realized on the fly it's not a run. Kyler Murray's got the ball and had to literally like a reverse 180 degrees at full speed and then keep pace with Kyler Murray into the flat. That's a difficult assignment, and did it well enough that he put Murray under pressure to the point where he threw the ball in harm's way.
Yeah, it was a big play by Witherspoon in that game. I wasn't expecting a a defensive effort like this, a defensive struggle from both teams. That's me underrating Arizona's defense.
Yeah, they schemed up pressure pretty well as well. Leonard Williams in this game had like an amazing game. I mean, Leonard Williams was an absolute monster in this game and didn't, like, even some of his impact. I mean, there was a play early in the game that was just ruled incomplete where it looked like a fumble live. Leonard Williams gets through, gets his arm onto Kyler Murray's arm, forces the ball out. On review, they're like, nah, the arms just started coming forward. It's an incomplete pass. But that was almost a monster forced fumble from Leonard Williams. But he had a huge game, like a ton of pressure, good against the run. Like, this was the sort of peak Leonard Williams.
7 pressures first run from PFF, including negated plays, a couple sacks. And then you talked about, Arizona can scheme pressure, right? Because we sit here every week and we're like, oh, pass rush grades are low. That means they're not winning one-on-ones a whole lot. I thought the broadcast did a good job showing how they essentially schemed up like Zaven Collins off the edge for a strip sack and everything. Like, they have done a good job either creating unblocked rushers or just creating enough indecision up front to get pressure, which makes you repeat for like the 8th straight week. I'm looking forward to seeing Jonathan Gannon when he gets some dudes up front. He doesn't have a lot of dudes up front on that defensive line in Arizona, but they're still, I would say, outperforming what they should be. So they did a nice job there. Also wanted to highlight JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba, again leading Seattle with 6 catches for 77 yards over the last 4 weeks. So since week 9, Jackson Smith-Njigba top 5 to 8 in pretty much every category, 23 receptions, second in yards with 368, and he's missed a game. They've had a bye during this time since week 9. So JSN is second in receiving yards since week 9. He's only played 3 games. Several receivers have played 4. He's got 3 touchdowns. He's tied for 5th in first downs plus touchdowns with 15. And he also had another 91 yards negated by penalty. So JSN starting to become the go-to guy for Seattle over these last few weeks.
He has, yeah, definitely. I also wanted to shout out a couple of the Cardinals receivers. Trey McBride.
McBride was awesome.
12 catches, 133 yards. And Kyler Murray had him for touchdowns twice and didn't get him, I think on the same drive. So I guess that would have only been 1 touchdown. But the one play where you got forced out of the pocket, McBride's open in the end zone. Kyler thought about it and then didn't pull the trigger. Thought about it, pulled it down, tried to take off scrambling instead. Couldn't make the gain or the yard to gain. But McBride's open in the end zone on that play. Maybe the next play or a couple of plays after, he took a shot at him, overthrew him in the end zone. He was open for that one as well. So McBride could have had an even bigger day than 12 catches for 133 yards. I mean, he has become an absolute monster of a tight end. And then Michael Wilson had this amazing deep catch in this game where he had to track the ball like directly over his shoulder, and actually the ball's coming in on the wrong shoulder. That is so hard to do. Like that, it's not that hard to get your head back and track a ball that's coming over the correct shoulder when the trajectory of the ball actually sends it tracking directly past your head to the other shoulder.
It was Willie Mays, right?
With a helmet on.
With a helmet
is incredibly difficult to do.
You tell me Willie couldn't make his catch with a helmet on?
And he had a guy in pretty close attendance at the time. Just a phenomenal catch by Michael Wilson. It was on it was like a 3rd down shot, I think.
Wilson had the negated touchdown too, right? He had a touchdown, yeah.
And he had another nice catch as well. Like he only had 2 catches, I think, but they were both very good.
He had a touchdown negated by penalty as well. Every week it's like it's oversimplifying by saying if Kyler Murray plays special that Arizona is really tough to beat, but he was inconsistent in this game. Again, you get the pick 6. It was 4th down. And he's got to kind of force a play, but that ends up being really the difference in the game, one of the biggest differences in the game. When Kyler's playing special ball, they are tough to beat, but he has not bottled that up and done it every single week. The totality of the season's been good, but it's really 3 or 4 games where he's been lights out and out of this world. Other than that, been just okay.
Yeah, and it was a close game. Like they had a chance, but they made a mess of the sort of late game sequence. One of those ones where you need 2 scores and not much time left. So at some point you just kick the field goal just to get the second possession theoretically, and they kind of didn't. They chewed up all the time, and then eventually settled for the field goal, missed it, and you're like, all right, the game's dead. But they sort of made a mess of that, I think.
All right, I got no more use of this game.
Done.
Do you?
No.
No, good. Denver Broncos 29, Las Vegas Raiders 19. Broncos moved to 7-5. Raiders moved to 2-9. The other story coming out of this game, Gardner Minshew, broken collarbone, was it?
Yeah.
Or clavicle?
Same thing.
What do you use? What do you say, clavicle or collarbone?
Collarbone.
Okay. Well, it's broken. He's out for the season. So we're going to get Desmond Ridder as of right now for the Raiders, unless they sign Daniel Jones.
Unless they can convince Danny to do it.
So, yeah, Raiders are 2-9 now.
Yeah.
Broncos get the win. Bo Nix, another pretty clean effort for the rookie.
This was like an echo of the Week 5 game between these two teams where the Raiders are winning. They're doing well. They're looking pretty good. And then a Minshew interception swings the entire game. From that point on, it's all Denver. Remember this happened the first time.
That was the same. Yeah,
they were going in for a touchdown.
Red zone
and Minshew
interception.
throws an interception, and from that point, that was a pick six, right? He threw a pick six to.
And they broke all the streaks, right? They broke the big losing streak.
Yeah.
Early in the season, had never beat the Las Vegas Raiders, and now they finally win a road game.
And this was another one. It was like 5 straight road defeats to the Raiders. So yeah, but same thing. It's like they go for a fake punt early in the game. It was a nice one actually as well.
That was
like
really
a
nice.
Little crossing route from to. I always wonder, how do you determine who the guy that's going to catch it is going to be, right? Like, because obviously to an extent it's sort of position based, right? But theoretically you should think, who do we want it to be? Like, who do you actually need to be able to catch to have this thing? Like Divine Diablo, the linebacker, is the guy that we're going to dial up as the intended receiver on this play. Just strikes me as a fascinating.
He was a college safety.
Sure, but it's like not somebody that I would immediately earmark as I want him to be the designated receiver here. But anyway, fake punt, nice. The Raiders, they've got the lead. Everything's going good. And then interception. And immediately off the back of that, Bo Nix to Cortland Sutton, touchdown. And it's like, it's Week 5 all over again.
Yeah. Cortland Sutton with 2 touchdowns. First one, I mean, they're both really nice, but first one, kind of more of a jump ball, I would say. Sutton goes up and gets it, but Broncos offense last couple weeks especially feels like they're finding their groove. They got Marvin Mims up for the 37-yarder out of the backfield again, so they schemed that one up. They got Troy Franklin for a 26-yarder. Vele's been a find for them in the 7th round. He had 6 catches for 80 yards, spreading the ball around. Didn't run the ball all that effectively overall, but spreading it around in the pass game. And again, it feels like Sean Payton and that offense just scheming it up maybe better than they have in a long time.
I mean, both sides of the ball.
The defense looks out.
According to BFF right now, Denver's defense amassed 32 pressures, right? 13 different players had a pressure in this game.
Oh, yeah. Their ability, I mean, that's been one of their stories. Their ability to have so many different contributors. And Nick Benito's been awesome. I wanted to highlight him in a minute. But so many different contributors and so many different people creating pressure has been impressive.
9 different players had multiple pressures to them. I mean, they are dialing it up from all over the place. And not, a lot of those guys are not defensive linemen. They've got linebackers with multiple pressures. They've got cornerbacks with pressure. Like, the defense is deep in its bag as well.
26-19, Benito. So Raiders still technically had a chance here. Nick Benito with a strip sack. He has played really well. I mean, we had some Broncos fans saying you didn't touch on Nick Benito enough. Like, we loved Nick Benito. We loved him during draft time. Since week 7, number 7 edge rusher by PFF grades in the NFL. So Benito, he's over 10 sacks now too. I don't know what the NFL has tracked, but I think he's over 10 sacks. But really impressive rush against Colton Miller. Gets the strip sack. And then he's finishing plays. He's had a few plays where he's just been unblockable this season.
Yeah.
But it's like, especially these last few weeks, Benito really putting it together and been one of the key players on any defense over the last few weeks.
Yeah, he's become a really good sort of situational pass rusher for them. He's that classic undersized designated pass rusher who's really good at that. Like, if you have an offensive tackle that struggles a little bit with speed, quickness, smaller guys, Nick Benito right now is a nightmare for those guys to go up against.
So, yeah, Denver's defense coming good again, man.
Yeah, and they lost him in this game to a knee injury, but shout out to Riley Moss, who's been a really important part of that defense. It's apparently an MCL sprain. They thought he could have gone back in the game, but kept him out for safety, so it's hopefully not a long-term thing for him. But Riley Moss has been a really important part of that defense. Obviously, Patrick Surtain is their number 1 corner and the best guy they have, but second year of Riley Moss has been really good. Like, earlier in the season, he had a bad tendency to kind of completely blow contain in the run game or whatever on his side of the field, but just in coverage terms, he's been a really good player.
Brandon Jones, the safety as well, he's the one who had the interception for Denver. I mean, that's kind of like the story of Denver's defense, isn't it? Because we've talked about Arizona's defense and having, being this no-name type of group. Denver, on paper, shouldn't be as good as they are defensively. But when you add it all up, they've been fantastic. Brandon Jones was a bit of a rotational player with the Dolphins, throughout much of his career. He's having a career year, played the most snaps of his career, PFF grade over 85 right now. He's been one of the better safeties in the league per PFF this season. So Denver's gotten contributions from just a lot of different players. Zach Allen, who didn't play in this one, but, getting a ton of pressure. John Franklin Myers had 7 pressures in this game. I mean, impressive job by Vance Joseph and what they've gotten out of Denver and all of their playmakers at every level, really.
Yeah, and we're continuing to see this Marvin Mims in the backfield thing pay dividends. They did it again. Yarder. Yeah, had another really nice 30-plus yarder out of the backfield. It's breaking defenses. I mean, they dropped coverage on him again. You could see before the snap on that play, like the entire defense is in chaos trying to figure out how to line up properly. Marvin Mims just out of the backfield, boom, big gain because they don't have anyone that's tracking him.
That's what I'm saying about Sean Payton. I feel like they have not, remember the old schematic advantage quote from Charlie Weiss years ago? He goes to Notre Dame and he says, we're going to have the schematic advantage at Notre Dame.
Handy.
They did not.
Huh.
But Sean Payton, I haven't felt like he has any kind of schematic advantage his first couple years in Denver. Last few weeks, feeling that a little bit more.
Yeah.
It is back. It feels like using personnel in different ways. The way they're moving Mims around has been huge. The way they're getting the ball to Cortland Sutton and Bo Nix, I think, just quieting his game a little bit more. He was very, a little out of control. The way he maneuvered the pocket, footwork, and everything early in the year, I think a lot of that has quieted, and he's getting the ball down the field, and they're making big plays.
Yeah, and that receiving corps is starting to look a lot more impressive now. Obviously, Cortland Sutton was the guy, but Vele has been really impressive. They're getting Troy Franklin a little bit more involved. Obviously, you've got Marvin Mims now as a backfield weapon as much as anything else. Suddenly that receiving corps is looking a little bit more potent than it did where it was like, outside of Cortland Sutton, who's going to make plays for you?
All right, man, anything else on this one?
I thought Denver's offensive line held up well. Like, Max Crosby had a couple plays here or there, but overall, that was a pretty impressive performance from them.
Jacoby Myers, Raiders played tough, man. Jacoby Myers making some tough catches in traffic, and Brock Bowers held to only 4 catches in this one.
He broke a Jerry Rice record.
He did.
Did you see that?
He did.
Wait.
He broke a Jerry Rice Raiders record.
Yeah, that's a record.
But go ahead.
So he broke it's the most receptions from any Raiders receiver through the first 11 games of the season, which hilariously was previously held by Jerry Rice, 40-year-old Jerry Rice. This is how insane Jerry Rice was, that the Raiders had Hall of Fame careers out of Tim Brown, like a contemporary of Jerry Rice. And yet it wasn't until 40-year-old Jerry Rice arrived with the receding hairline that he racked up a league-leading or a team record number of catches through 11 games. Now, you can also say that's a Rich Gannon stat as much as it's a Jerry Rice stat, but still, it's quite funny to me that Raiders legend Jerry Rice is the guy that held that record.
Is every Joe Montana, Steve Young, Rich Gannon stat merely a Jerry Rice record?
Who can say?
Jerry Rice stat, I should say.
It's just, 40-year-old Jerry Rice holds records for the Raiders, not Hall of Famer Tim Brown.
If the kids have not seen the early 2000 Raiders play with Tim Brown, Jerry Rice, and Rich Gannon, it might not look as cool now, but it did then because it was a run-first type of league, and they were passing all over the place, and Gannon was fun to watch back then. That was a good offense. Charlie Garner out of the backfield. Congrats to Brock Bowers. Raiders come back on Black Friday with likely Desmond Ridder against the 10-1 Chiefs. I'm going to get my Christmas tree.
Doesn't immediately scream upset.
It does. With Minshew in there, they at least you have the opportunity. But I don't know. See what happens. Anything else here?
No.
Sunday Night Football time. Philadelphia Eagles 37, Los Angeles Rams 20. Eagles move to 9-2. Rams fall to 5-6. 7th straight win for the Eagles. You already mentioned, hey, Eagles, Lions looking like a collision course in the NFC Championship because the Eagles defense was getting after it, that pass rush from various sources, including the linebacker level. And then, of course, the story of the game, Saquon Barkley with 255 rushing yards, another 47 through the air, 302 yards from scrimmage, 2 long touchdowns, all in the second half. And the MVP discussion has commenced once again.
One of the
Saquon Barkley.
top 10 performances in NFL history in terms of yards from scrimmage in a single game.
It was impressive.
The Eagles had 314 rushing yards in this game. Chris said it late in the broadcast. It felt like a repeat of that Washington game where it was pretty close and pretty back and forth for a while. Washington held tough, and then the second half, the Eagles' pressure, them leaning on you, just broke the dam. And in the second half, they just completely ran away, and they exerted their will. It was the same thing with the Rams. Like, the Rams' defense was looking pretty good early. Their young players like Braden Fisk had a nice sack. Jared Verse just steamrolled. Jordan Mailata took him into the air. Jordan Mailata weighs 365 pounds, and Jared Verse put him airborne by bull rushing him.
Got the running start.
He got a running start laterally. He was running laterally and took him. The point is, you could take a 15-yard running start, run into Jordan Mailata, and not take him off his feet.
Yeah, but I'm not a speed to power guy.
No. To take a 365-pound man off the ground with a bull rush is absurd power. Anyway, Verse was making plays. Fisk was making plays. The defense was looking pretty good. And then in the second half, just the wearing down of the Eagles' offensive line and the running game eventually just broke the dam. And then a couple of times, as soon as you get Saquon to the second level, he can make the one cut that makes the safety miss, and he's gone.
I think we highlighted that could have been a possibility. I haven't trusted the Rams. I think I mentioned on the previous show, the Rams defensive front love Kobe Turner, love Braden Fisk. It's not necessarily their game to be holding the point against a big offensive line or big powerful offensive line like the Eagles. So we kind of saw a little bit of that. Yeah, the Eagles have a lot of ways to win. They got the dudes, man. They got A.J. Brown still making big plays, but Saquon's the story here because when he went to Philadelphia, we said, look, if you give him a little bit of space, he could take to the house every time. And he kind of does every time.
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's that wild. I don't think the MVP stuff is actually that wild. Saquon Barkley, the first player in NFL history with multiple rushing touchdowns of 70-plus yards in the second half of a game.
But this is just a product of, we know the impact that the other stuff has on running back production, right? So Marcus Mosher has a tweet that running back success rate for Eagles running backs over the last few years, 56.8% in 2022 for Miles Sanders, 54.1% for DeAndre Swift last season, and then 56.1% for Saquon Barkley this year. So the Eagles offense is able to create this 55-ish baseline success rate for running back, and then Saquon Barkley is going to add all the value on top of that in terms of what he does at the second level and making those good successful runs turn into breakaway runs. That's valuable, but you can't divorce it from the first part.
That's the point, though.
But that's less valuable than Josh Allen out here carrying an offense by himself or Lamar Jackson. It's not more valuable than the 12 quarterbacks you would put ahead of him. It's really impressive, and it's absolutely Offensive Player of the Year worthy right there with Derrick Henry. But it's not MVP. It isn't. You can't have an MVP that is not a quarterback in today's NFL if you care about the value element of the award. Now, you can make the argument that MVP is still a vibes-driven award a lot of the time. Adrian Peterson won in 2012. He got 2,000 yards. It was a really impressive performance coming off a knee injury, which was a really big part of that. Like, Peyton Manning had an absurd year in 2012, but Adrian Peterson won MVP because the vibes and the story took over. That's the kind of game,
Brady
Sunday Night Football.
Too. I mean, both of those guys should have been MVP candidates. But Peterson won it in 2012 because they had a play-in game in Week 17.
He won it because
against
at some
Green
point
Bay.
the story took over.
But they averaged more yards per carry than yards per attempt, right? So you're watching this Vikings offense where Adrian Peterson was averaging more yards per carry than Christian Ponder averaged per dropback. So that kind of made sense. What you just mentioned about the Saquon Barkley thing, so the Eagles are creating some level of success rate. Well, Saquon Barkley is creating touchdowns from 70 yards away, from 55 yards away. And then when you go, look, I'm not saying he should win the award. All I'm saying is I'm willing to entertain this conversation more in this particular case than I was previously. When Todd Gurley was in the mix in 2018, I thought it was absurd, right? Because the Rams offense was so efficient, and then he was like the beneficiary from 3 yards out and from 2 yards out. And it's like, oh, he's got all these touchdowns. And there was discussion this week that, oh, Jalen Hurts is stealing all the 1-yard touchdowns. That's going to kill Saquon Barkley's MVP case and his stats and his contract and all these different things, which I think NFL teams are smart enough to not reward 9 extra 1-yard touchdowns that are just gimmies for the stat column, right? But Saquon Barkley is creating touchdowns where they previously didn't exist, right? DeAndre Swift wasn't creating them. Miles Sanders wasn't creating them, even though he's in a great system that's accentuating and giving him those opportunities. The other piece I'll say is if you're going to make the MVP case, you would look at individual games in something like this where, yeah, the Rams were hanging tough until Saquon Barkley took over in the second half, or the week they played the Saints and probably should have lost to the Saints until Saquon Barkley created a 50-yard run out of nowhere, or week 1 against the Packers in Brazil where Saquon Barkley had 3 touchdowns, including the wheel route, and created a long rushing, two long runs, on his own. That's where you would create the narrative off the individual games as well, and the individual games where he ended up completely turning the tide. I get the value of the quarterback. I get that whole thing. But sometimes equating running back value versus the quarterback value is difficult. But you almost have to say, well, will any other running back do this? And I think what you're proving is, hey, any other running back will be successful and maybe average 5 yards a pop or 4.8 in this Philadelphia offense. But Saquon's going to average over 6 right now. No other running backs are doing that. Over 6 and creating 50 and 60 and 70-yard touchdowns over and over and over again. Obviously, there's a lot to that.
Yeah, of course there's a lot to it. I mean, Saquon Barkley is a really good player, and if we hadn't essentially predicted this coming, it would be more impactful in terms of his value. But the whole point was, in this Eagles offense...
We did kind of predict this, yes.
Like, in this Eagles offense, Saquon Barkley is going to go off because they already have a really highly functional run game, the best offensive line in the NFL for the last 3 years. A really good system across the board. Saquon is exactly the type of running back that will make that extremely potent because he can add all this value at the end. But like you watch, just the 2 touchdown runs from that, the 2 long touchdown runs from that game, right? The first one, he's 10 yards deep before he has to make the one cut against the guy who's being blocked. It's a really nice cut at full speed, but it's one move which takes 10 yards into 70, right? The 10 yards is already there. It's already a really productive run. There's a lot of running backs in the NFL that can make a cut at high speed. The second one, it's like you get around the edge there and the entire defense is gone. Like it's one slight move. It's blocked up really well. Saquon is absolutely maximizing the value of what is there, but the value of what is there is extremely high already before you quantify what he's bringing to the table.
That goth guy in the chat brings up the point, and this is the challenge for the running back, right? Saquon's in this discussion, but he'll have to keep up the insane pace to be a serious contender, in his opinion, right? And that's the problem, right? So every year this happens. 2021, I think it was, Jonathan Taylor has a 4-touchdown game against Buffalo. In Indianapolis, Carson Wentz's Colts crush Josh Allen's Bills. And it's Jonathan Taylor with a 4-touchdown game. And immediately people look at the stats. They're like, oh, wow, Jonathan Taylor has 10 or 11 touchdowns. Oh, he's an MVP candidate. We just saw him run for 4 touchdowns, but it was off the back of like one game. And then the next week he's got 43 yards. It's like, well, we forgot about Jonathan Taylor. That's the challenge with the running back. One of these weeks, Saquon goes 15 carries for 50 yards and no scores. And it's like, well, he lost it because people treat it like a horse race, right?
Yeah.
And you're always one spot apart. This guy's in first, this guy's in second, this guy's in third, and you go from second to first and first to third, and you just move spots. And it's all based off the last performance. That's the challenge for a running back because at some point Saquon's going to go 15 for 48 yards and no big plays. But the difference between, I think, that Jonathan Taylor example where it kind of came out of nowhere that I pulled out is Saquon's been doing this all year. It's been an all-year thing. And look, forget the MVP for a minute. The Eagles, many ways to win, once again. Didn't have Devontae Smith in this one. A.J. Brown makes big plays. Jalen Hurts gets the ball to him. Missed a Dallas Goedert wide open touchdown. Should have had even more there. And then you have Saquon in this offensive line. Tough to stop this Eagles offense right now.
I mean, I think the bigger point, whether or not Saquon is MVP or not, and I think honestly, so I think two things. I think number one, it is silly. As long as if you've become so entrenched in the idea that value is an important part of the MVP as opposed to just the best player we're trying to award here. If you think that that's true, it's a quarterback in today's NFL. It just is. There's basically no scenario where a quarterback does not win the most valuable player award. But it is also an award that still gets given largely down to storyline. Lamar Jackson won MVP last year because the story took over. Like, it was a year where nobody really had a hand on MVP.
No other good candidates.
And then Lamar Jackson, in a few games, had the better story. His story was, I beat a series of good teams back to back to back, while everyone else had like a random disqualifying game when their opportunity arose. Lamar Jackson sort of gets passed around, disqualifying game, disqualifying game, disqualifying game. Lamar gets hold of it, boom, he stomps somebody, he's MVP. Unanimous almost. So that's the way the award goes. Adrian Peterson in 2012, the story took over, the narrative took hold, he became MVP, even though in any like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady could easily did have an MVP case that year. It went to Adrian Peterson because the story took over. This is the type of game that absolutely sets the story on fire for Saquon Barkley. I mean, just look at Twitter last night off that game. People are declaring him MVP. That's the type of game that will set the story rolling in your direction.
And part of the story is the Mara thing, and we had off-season hard knocks, and we knew that what the Giants were thinking when they let Saquon walk, and we knew that they would be upset, and Mara would be upset if he went to the Eagles. Yeah, that's a big part of it.
It's a huge part of it. But my point being, the more important part of that is, like, again, look at some of the plays. The Rams knew they needed to stop that run game, whether or not, like, Saquon is the embodiment of it, but like the offensive line as well. So one of those touchdowns, the Rams went with like a 5-man defensive line. They're like, no, we're stopping the run. As soon as you get past the 5-man defensive line, now you're into a short-handed secondary or second level, and that's when Saquon can go nuts. So the fact that this offensive run game as a totality, Saquon plus the run blocking, is that powerful and that destructive, is making everything better for the Eagles.
One advanced stat discussion I want to have really quick. I sent you a screenshot from Ben Baldwin's Running Backs Don't Matter, ironically, site. After like 2 plays in the Chiefs-Bills game from last week, Kareem Hunt had a carry and Xavier Worthy had a carry.
Yeah.
We need to investigate EPA.
Okay.
All right, because you're going to see EPA stuff.
You want to get the feds on it?
Yeah, we need an investigation. So Kareem Hunt had 1 carry for 5 yards. It was on 2nd and 10. Xavier Worthy had 1 carry for 7 yards, but it was on 1st and 10. Their difference in EPA was astronomical.
Yeah.
So Worthy goes 7 yards on 1st down. He gets 0.5 EPA for that 1 carry. Kareem Hunt goes 5 yards on 2nd and 10, and he gets negative 0.3 EPA. So the EPA, as I mentioned, I say a lot, is not really just a QB-driven stat. There's so many other factors there. But the QB is the biggest driver toward this number because they control when they throw it, who they throw to. They control it more. The running back is at the mercy of like the call, right? They just get the handoff. They just get the toss play. They just get whatever play is given to them. So you almost can't hold EPA against them. Because if you get why is the EPA so different on a 5-yard carry on 2nd and 10? When you get like 5 on 2nd and 10, that's a good run by the running back theoretically. But if you were handed the ball on 1st and 10 instead of 2nd and 10, your advanced stat changes. So the running back's kind of at the mercy too much of the advanced stat opportunity. You almost need like an expected EPA. You know what I mean?
An expected
because like the
EPA.
EPA. So because what happens is on 2nd and 10, if you only pick up 5 yards, it's not that great. We'd rather get more. But if you do pick up 5 yards on 1st and 10, it's like, all right, that's a good play. That's good overall. But the running back can't control that. So it's almost like as soon as the ball is handed off, you have another expectation, right? Which changes because you're not supposed to get a high EPA on a handoff on 2nd and 10. That's not your fault, though. That's the play callers. You get all that?
Yeah.
So you're just going to see those numbers, right? Oh, you can't have a running back because of this or that. But like you're almost looking at Barkley relative to what other running backs are doing. And if you do that, it's like, well, Barkley and Derrick Henry are just in a different world this year, really.
Yeah. I mean, I will say
you weren't ready for that discussion.
No. I think that there are 3 running games in the NFL right now that are sufficiently problematic for defenses that they are warping the entire way that teams defend them, and it opens everything up, right? Number 1 is the team we already talked about earlier, Detroit, where they're going for runs on 3rd and disrespectful runs, going for it on 4th down, the two-headed monster of that backfield. Like they are destroying teams on the ground, and that's helping everything. Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the pass game, all's good. Philadelphia with Saquon Barkley in that offensive line, and then Baltimore with that duo of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Those 3 teams are by far the top 3 teams in the NFL in EPA per play in the run game. They are gapping everybody else. They are the teams where you are having to defend those run games differently, which now exposes you to big plays in the pass game, and suddenly A.J. Brown is one-on-one, or Jamison Williams is one-on-one, or, Zay Flowers is one-on-one for Baltimore. Those teams' run games are so potent that they're making teams focus on defending that before the pass game.
And so it's a great point, and I'm all for like that stat I said hours ago on the show. Saquon averaging 4.1 yards per carry with the Giants over the last 3 years, and now being over 6, 2-yard per carry difference. Obviously, Philadelphia, the system, Hurts, the O-line, having to defend A.J. Brown, all of that is rolled in here. I'm curious if everyone around the league is going to actually see this. Like, is Jerry and are the Dallas Cowboys sitting at home? Like, is Ashton Genty more likely to go in the top 10 now because of what Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry are doing for the Ravens? Like, is Ashton Genty, you are a Dallas Cowboy in the top 10 because I'm watching Saquon Barkley take over games, theoretically, in primetime. Just saying, it might lead to some differences in how teams evaluate running backs, even though we know
it will.
That Barkley and Henry went to the great situations that should put them in position to succeed the way they are.
And just to put some stat to that briefly before we get off this specific topic, it's not as clean as this, but generally speaking, rushing yards before contact per attempt is a blocking driven statistic, right? Running backs can absolutely affect that, speed, etc. But Saquon Barkley this year is averaging 2.1 yards before contact per attempt. Seattle, with their awful interior offensive line, is averaging 0.6 yards before contact per attempt. So Kenneth Walker, who's a really good running back, Kenneth Walker on average is being hit almost 4 times closer to the line of scrimmage than Saquon Barkley is. How much do you think that affects?
I think it's usually the run blocking, but the people that break that, Jamal Charles, they're the speed backs.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley, right? The speed backs, Jahmyr Gibbs, they break those rules a little bit more. That's all I'll say.
I don't think Saquon Barkley.
I think the yards before contact are generally a blocking and scheme thing, but it's also a QB run game thing. So that's Hurts, the keeper game, and that's speed.
Yeah,
breaks it a little bit.
But Saquon Barkley does not have a history.
Because Seattle, people aren't expecting Geno in the design run game, even though he scrambled.
Yeah, but Saquon Barkley does not have a history of breaking that stat the way
Jamal
Charles did.
I understand.
For example, last year he was at like 1.1.
Yeah, he was gone from one of the worst blocking situations to one of the best.
But my point being, like, just imagine a world where Kenneth Walker is suddenly in this Philadelphia offense. What does that look like, right? Like
he looks good.
It's difficult. Like I don't care at this point about the MVP talk. That will evolve as the stretch goes down. Either the narrative will take off and he'll become the almost unanimous MVP, or people will determine, actually, you know what, it's probably going to be one of the quarterbacks, right? Josh Allen is, in fact, MVP, or whoever it is. But the broader point is that Philadelphia's run game is a dominant force.
Yeah.
And for at least 2 games this season, I think it has genuinely produced that cliche of the body blows and the leaning on them and the grinding them down. And the Rams and Washington's defenses have ultimately buckled late in the game, trying to withstand this Philadelphia run game. And that doesn't even factor in what they can do with the pass game with A.J. Brown and when they get Devontae Smith back and Dallas Goedert, et cetera, et cetera. So the Eagles' offense now has the capability not to just beat you and take over with Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown and the dude player. Like I was saying, they're just the modern Tennessee, right? They've assembled a new version of the dudes where every now and again, one of their dominant playmakers is just going to beat you by being a better athlete, bigger, stronger, faster. Not only are they capable of doing that, but their run game is so powerful and efficient, and that line, I mean, it's got multiple players on it that are over 365 pounds, right? Yeah. Eventually that wears on you, and it seems to do that. There's 2 teams, I think, maybe 3 if you can include, I think Baltimore's line is less of a factor, but Derrick Henry. There's 3 teams, I think, that can lean on a team now until they break late in the game. And it's those 3, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Baltimore.
Last note here. Philadelphia's pass rush. I thought the broadcast did a good job of showing how many times Jalen Carter was double-teamed when they finally didn't double-team him. He's winning quickly, getting into the backfield.
Yep.
Milton Williams making a lot of plays. Brandon Graham making a lot of plays. But unfortunately, tears his triceps. He announced before the season this would be his last season. So
that's a crappy way to go out.
Year 15 in the NFL, I believe, for Brandon Graham. And so if we've done this before, we've poured one out for Joe Thomas. We can't because it's
not our studio anymore.
It's a wood floor and it's not our studio. But I would, if I could pour one out for Brandon Graham, I would like to do that. If this is it, if this is the end of his career and he does not reconsider and come back, outstanding career for Brandon Graham, and he was still playing at a high level.
He was still having a good year. Last couple of weeks haven't been great, but he was playing really well last night. He's been having, generally speaking, an impressive season for him. He's been playing well. Despite, what is he, 36, 37? He's still going and looking really good. This just sucks for him, the way to go out. Bummer.
The night he was drafted, I was in the bullpen in Colorado Springs. We got snowed out the following night for day 2 of the 2010 NFL draft, but I was had my cell phone in the bullpen in Colorado Springs and telling one of my teammates who is a diehard Eagles fan, this is a good pick. Brandon Graham is a good draft pick. Don't you worry. I know you've never heard of him, but he's going to be a good draft pick. And here we are 15 years later, could be the end of his career.
Still
that's what I remember from Brandon Graham.
Who
draft
was
night 2010.
Yeah, what draft was that? Because there was a guy,
Tyson Alu went like 9,
No, there was an edge rusher that people thought was definitely better than Brandon Graham and quite clearly was.
Robert Quinn? That might have been the Quinn year.
Don't think so.
Now I got to do this.
Who was it?
2010 NFL draft.
That was JPP and Derek Morgan.
Oh, Quinn was 11. Sorry, yeah. So Derek Morgan probably. JPP was probably more hyped.
Definitely more hyped. I think it was Derek Morgan, the guy.
He did a backflip.
That's true. I think it was Derek Morgan, the guy that everyone was like, Philadelphia should have picked him.
No, Eagles nailed it. They were all pretty good players. I mean, JPP, obviously, really good player. Morgan was solid, but Brandon Graham has been fantastic. Helped him win a Super Bowl, obviously.
Indeed.
Philadelphia looking like a powerhouse. They're in that juggernaut category with the Lions, with the Chiefs, Bills, whoever else you want to
Yeah, really not many holes on this Philadelphia team. Like, you look at them, like, if they stay healthy, there's not that many ways to beat them. They lost Darius Slay to a concussion in that game, and all of a sudden that did create a hole. Like, Isaiah Rodgers was picked on pretty mercilessly when he came in.
He was.
So that's a potential concern, is that they're really good with those guys. Quinion, the 2 rookies, Mitchell, DeJean, and Slay, but if one of them goes down, the depth isn't there. So, as I say, as long as everyone stays healthy, they're in a good spot. If people don't stay healthy, that's when the holes emerge.
All right, man. That's it for us this week. Week 12 NFL review.
We didn't talk a lot about the Rams in that game. It was just a Saquon Barkley essay.
They got run over. They hung tough. Stafford made some big throws. He was getting popped again, getting hit hard a lot in this one. A lot of just missed plays from Puka Nacua, but he still got his.
Played really well, yeah.
Pass rush had like a couple flashes early on. The verse play and the Fisk thing, that was more on Jalen Hurts. They did not get a lot of pressure on the Eagles. They got beat up.
They did. They definitely got wore on. And their offensive line just couldn't really hold up. Like
O-line had their issues,
which, you look at that offensive line, it's a group that should get beaten up by the Philadelphia defensive line, but it definitely happened that way. Yeah, they didn't get a ton of pressure. They got beaten up in the trenches, both sides of it, really.
That was the story. That's why we talked about the Eagles so much. Just because the inverse was, the Rams didn't do well in the areas the Eagles did well. That's it.
Yep.
All right, programming note. Wednesday is our Week 13 NFL preview. We'll go through all 16 games. We've got 3 games on Thanksgiving. We've got a Black Friday game and, 11 more on Sunday and then 1 on Monday. It's a long weekend. That's it for us today. We're going to be instantly reacting to the Harbaugh Bowl tonight.
Harbaugh, 3.
Ravens, Chargers. So if you're not already subscribed on YouTube, make sure you hit the thumbs up. Movember, we're growing mustaches for a reason. Our pictures are mustaches for a reason. Donation potential in the chat to benefit men's health. It's all in the description. All right. That's it for us today. We'll see you again on Wednesday. More. Check the mic.